But anyway, yeah. All right, guys. Quick break for me. I'm going to take a short break this time around. Top of the hour, we'll start Space News. And Space News will go for about an hour, give or take. Thomas, people are just going to want to talk Starship all day today, so I might forego other news for till tomorrow. So everyone's just going to talk about the Starship stacking, so I think we'll do that for an hour. I'm dead serious. And then we'll go from there. So I hope you enjoyed Minecraft early hours, guys. Jesus, that's a lot of links. Dude, we can't get through all that. What are you, nuts? I'll bring it open, but I'm gonna have to really curtail the news, guys. Half of it is Starship, though. Okay. I don't know if you're going to like it, but I've put a total of 18 large landing gear on the SSAO to get it to survive a 5 meters a second drop test. Okay. We'll look at the video. Should also probably talk about Tori Bruno and the B4. Cover the R's story. Cover the... Oh, God. Okay. Carrier, I'm gonna keep your video up. I'm just trying to organize everything. Okay. What happened yesterday in KSP? Nothing. I didn't feel good, so I stopped streaming. Anyway, okay, guys, I'll be back in about 5, alright? Can't say, but have a great stream. Alright, man. See you later. I'll be back in a little bit. Like a 5-minute break. Don't go anywhere. I'm just getting a cup of coffee.
Finally, for March of 1989, near normal precipitation, near normal temperatures in March, and above normal precipitation. An active storm track will keep cooking on the East Coast here in March as well. And the storm dates, the 5th and 6th, 10th through the 12th, the 16th through the 18th, 22nd through the 24th, and the 29th and the 30th of the month. That is our long-range winter forecast. If you missed any of that, we're going to do it again tonight on our 10:30 broadcast. Be with us. And you can also write me and include a self-addressed stamp envelope. Channel 11 here at 220 East 42nd Street, and we'll send you a copy of that forecast. That's the story. That's the story. That's the story. Finally, for March of 1989, near normal precipitation, near normal temperatures in March, and above normal precipitation, that active storm track will keep cooking on the East Coast here in March as well, and the storm dates, the 5th and 6th, 10th through the 12th, the 16th through the 18th, 22nd through the 24th, and the 29th and the 30th of the month. That is our long-range winter forecast. If you missed any of that, we're going to do it again tonight on our 10:30 broadcast. Be with us, and you can also write me and include the self-addressed stamped envelope, Channel 11 here at 220 East 42nd Street, and we'll send you a copy of that forecast. That's the story. That's the story. That's the story. And finally, for March of 1989, near normal precipitation, near normal temperatures in March, and above normal precipitation, that active storm track will keep cooking on the East Coast here in March as well, and the storm dates, the 5th and 6th, 10th through the 12th, the 16th through the 18th, 22nd through the 24th, and the 29th and the 30th of the month. That is our long-range winter forecast. If you missed any of that, we're going to do it again tonight on our 10:30 broadcast. Be with us, and you can also write me and include the self-addressed stamped envelope, Channel 11 here at 220 East 42nd Street, and we'll send you a copy of that forecast. That's the story. That's the story. That's the story. For March of 1989, near normal precipitation, I should say, I'm sorry, near normal temperatures in March, and above normal precipitation, an active storm track will keep cooking on the East Coast here in March as well. And the storm dates, the 5th and 6th, 10th through the 12th, the 16th through the 18th, 22nd through the 24th, and the 29th and the 30th of the month. That is our long-range winter forecast. If you missed any of that, we're going to do it again tonight on our 10:30 broadcast. Be with us. And you can also write me and include a self-addressed stamp envelope. Channel 11 here at 220 East 42nd Street, and we'll send you a copy of that forecast. That's the story. That's the story. That's the story.
All right, guys, let's do this. Oh, man. Dude, my back was super stiff there for a second. I had to take a break. That's what was freaking wild. Like right before I went on news, I was like, but I stretched, and now we're good. Happy Friday. Welcome to Space News. All right, so the big news is that SpaceX stacked a full Starship stack, but we will talk about that more. What I think we should do is get through all the other news real quick. Phil, we could talk about the test stuff another day. The big pressing stuff is what's going on with the BE-4, I suppose. Stacks on stacks on stacks. You're getting old? Staples, yeah, I hope not. Oh, nice soapbox. Yeah, oh, very nice. Cool. feel like the Space and Rocket Review has a theme song. We have an informal theme song, which is it's this one. If I wanted to make it like a formalized one, dude, I'd probably need to go buy the rights, dude. I'm not 35 yet, Endo. Give me 1 second. I still think you should hop on a keyboard and make your own music. Maybe.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
One more message to send out. Came here, 34-month resub. Someone call Popsky and have him make a synthwave version of this. I mean, this is pretty much already synthwave. No, I mean, this isn't even synthwave, Ernog. It's just synth, because this came out in the 80s. This song is from like 1982 or something. Alright, there you go. There's the song in chat. Alright, let's go. Let's go for space news. Gophers? Freeze gopher. Alright, so the first video of the day is coming from Astra here. This might get loud. So headphone users, you're gonna wanna... You might wanna... That's not too bad. Cool. A little bit of residual fire there. So this is Astra's Rocket 3.0, serial number 0006. They did a successful hot fire test, which is pretty cool. Astra is a company that was basically founded on the principle of being able to launch anywhere at any time within 24 hours. Now, what does that mean? All of their launch equipment, the strongback, the launch pad, the rocket, mission control, the fuel tanks, everything. Every piece of GSE and rocket can fit inside of a Connex container. They can fit inside of a shipping container, and they can literally just ship like 4 or 5 shipping containers, and they can... All they need is a parking lot to launch, basically. And then, obviously, a water tank. But the idea is that they can launch from anywhere. You don't need to... They don't need to just be at a launch site. Now... Right now, while they're doing testing, they are at a launch site. They're at Kodiak, the Kodiak launch site in Alaska. Sounds like a mobile SAM. Kind of. But this can launch stuff all the way into orbit. Hey, Jack. Thanks for the resub, man. We watched that yesterday, Swishio. No crane is needed, tweets. No crane. The rocket's horizontally integrated, so they attach it to the launch pad and whoop, turns itself up. What's my soda of choice? I just like Coke, to be honest with you. This is just water. I've been trying to stay away from soda, though. Too much sugar. I just drink water and coffee every day. And then maybe like a beer at the end of the day. But yeah, so Astra look to be getting ready for their next flights. They also have a Astra got a contract with the Department of Defense for launching payloads. You don't really know what it is, but yeah, that's cool that they're shaping up. We got another small sat launcher in the books. Now, we'll do this news next. So this is coming from Boeing. Let's see. Starliner work in the integration facility to continue through the weekend. This weekend, Boeing engineers will continue testing and evaluating the CST-100 Starliner spacecraft inside of the vertical integration facility. Yesterday, teams powered up the spacecraft to receive data and send commands to the propulsion system valves that unexpectedly indicated closed positions in the early launch countdown on Tuesday. The transmitted commands successfully opened some of the valves, giving the team new data to assess while also beginning physical inspections. Cautiously optimistic is a good way to describe how the team is feeling, said John Vollmer, Starliner Vice President and Program Manager. They're coming forward with innovative ideas and prioritizing the safety of the spacecraft and their teammates. Boeing aims to perform all activities at the vehicle integration facility before returning to the launch pad for flight. If necessary, the spacecraft could return to the commercial crew and cargo processing facility at Kennedy Space Center for further troubleshooting and inspections and possible return to the pad for launch this month. Boeing is assessing multiple launch opportunities for Starliner in August and will work with NASA and ULA to confirm those dates while the team is ready to proceed with the OFT-2 mission. Yeah, Joe, it kind of does, doesn't it? I mean, Atlas is bigger than Rocket 3.0. That thing is it's a tiny little rocket. So interesting. That's very interesting. So it looks like we said yesterday that, you know, if they were going to power the capsule on inside of the VIF, that means they figured something out. And it looks like that gut intention was right. They wouldn't have powered on the software if they didn't figure out a way to get those valves open and close. So it looks like they're going to do more testing there. Well, you know, beginning physical inspections to make sure that the valves are actually closing. And if the testing goes right, then they could roll back to the pad. If the testing goes wrong, they might have to deintegrate the spacecraft, which is not ideal. You generally want to not do that because that's screwing up your procedures. Every spacecraft launch campaign, from the time you make the mission, right, to the time it actually leaves the pad, has basically a checklist. There's basically a list of processes and procedures to go from, you know, hey, I want to do this, to hey, we're ready to launch. That's part of NASA's systems engineering. That's what it's called. It's NASA systems engineering. So usually going backwards in the checklist, like you ever assembled IKEA furniture and you skip a step, or you did a step wrong, so you have to go back, and it's like, wait, what was I doing again? Oh yeah, it takes a second to come. Yeah, with rockets, you don't want to, you don't want that to happen. So that's why I'm pretty sure they don't want to deintegrate the spacecraft, but if they have to, they will. They're going to try not to, though. So we'll wait and see what happens here. But like I said, yesterday, they wouldn't be powering on the spacecraft inside of the VIF if they didn't have a potential solution. So, good on Boeing for reporting this. Good on them for being straightforward about what's going on. I do appreciate it. It makes it a little easy for me to report the news and get a better pulse on what's going on with spaceflight. Now, everybody says, oh, poor Starliner. Oh, my gosh, Boeing's so far behind, blah, blah, blah. But see, here's the thing, fellas, and this is this is what the benefit of commercial crew is, okay? The benefit of commercial crew is that you have redundant dissimilar architecture. So NASA has a way to get people to the space station from the US, not just Soyuz. So if they have to use Soyuz, they could. If they have to use Dragon, that's fine. Even Soyuz is redundant to Dragon. If we have to, we could go to our Russian friends and say, hey, we need more Soyuz capsules, and they'll gladly build more, right? So, the beauty of this is, and this is really where redundant dissimilar architecture shines, is that, you know, one could say like, oh, Boeing has the pressure on, they got to launch it. They only have a certain amount of time to do that, this, or this. When in reality, there's really no pressure. There's no pressure here. If they have to take the spacecraft apart, they will. There's no pressure. You know, I would argue the opposite. Redundant dissimilar architecture means that they don't have to go fast because SpaceX can pick up the slack and they probably will happily oblige doing that. I mean, I'm pretty sure Boeing doesn't want to do that, but they can. They can go slow. They can take their time and they can make it right. There's no pressure to get this thing launched. I mean, there's an overarching thing like, you know, you probably want to get Starliner operational before the ISS gets decommissioned. That would probably be useful. But you know, right now when you're in the testing regime, you take as much time as you need. Operational missions can come at you fast. But right now, when you're testing and you want to make sure that the thing is good and you want to make sure it works correctly, it pays to take your time now, especially with the type of testing that they're doing. Why is it such a big deal powering a spacecraft? Is it that much different than a car like engine, radio, and lights? It's not a big deal powering the spacecraft on, Swishio. That's no. You missed the point again. I'll chalk that one up to a language thing. So them powering on the spacecraft. So you wouldn't. Okay, so say you want to turn on a car, right? If we're going to use a car analogy, you turn the car on, right? You got to turn the key. Now everything is powered, right? Would you turn the key if your fuel pump wasn't working? So most cars nowadays have an electronic fuel pump. It's just a little electric motor attached to a pump, and it's inside of the fuel tank, right? And it pumps fuel to the motor. Straightforward, right? You can usually, actually, if you want to learn something, if you have a newer car that has electronic fuel injection, and I say that, electronic fuel injection has been in cars for 30 years now, you turn it, you'll hear a buzzing noise. Like you turn the key, but you don't turn it to start. You turn it, and you'll hear the zzz. That's the fuel pump working. Now, Swishio, if you had an indication that the fuel pump was not working, would you start the car? No, you wouldn't start the car. Why? Well, you wouldn't start the car because you know the fuel pump isn't working. You know you're not going to go anywhere. Powering the spacecraft on, especially when Boeing said it was a hardware issue with valves, means that they wouldn't do that unless it was something that could be fixed from powering the spacecraft on. Meaning that, you know, they could turn they turn the key, and if the fuel pump starts working, which seems to indicate that it has, then is there anything wrong? Well, that's what they're trying to figure out. But they wouldn't power on the spacecraft. You wouldn't turn the thing on for a hardware problem. If your fuel pump is junk, and they went to turn the key and the valve didn't open, right? Or the valve stayed open, it wouldn't close. And then they turn it off and they power it back on again and it works. Now the question is, okay, the capsule works, but why did it do that? And that's what they're trying to figure out now. They're basically troubleshooting not just not just fixing it, but why you needed to fix it and why that happened. That's why this is taking a second. So powering the spacecraft on isn't like, you powered the spacecraft on, how does that fix a hardware problem? No, it doesn't. You wouldn't do that unless you were sure that the thing would work. Does that make sense? Combing the deserts of data. Yeah, but, they're not just doing IT here. They're doing IT and development. Because remember, it's testing. Testing is part of the development regime here. I mean, you ideally don't want to learn anything new when you're testing, but if you do, you have to figure out why. No, I understood that there's a valve problem, but why did they make a big deal about powering the spacecraft on and not deintegrating it? Like, is it push a button on and off, or is there like an extreme time-consuming process that's why they didn't do it in the first place? Yeah. If they deintegrate the spacecraft, it's going to take more time than powering it on. But the way you're thinking about this is incorrect. The way you're thinking about it is that, oh, you know, if they take the spacecraft apart, you know, could they take it apart or could they power it on? No. It's not one or the other. It's not that. That's not your two options here. You're not thinking about that correctly. Now, in terms of physical time, to take the spacecraft off and bring it back to the hangar, so to speak, yeah, that's going to take more time than physically powering the thing on. Yeah, it takes less time. But once again, you're not thinking about that correctly. They powered the spacecraft on because they were sure that, or at least reasonably sure that the valve, they could get it to close with the software, which means that the hardware could be working. But once again, they have to figure out why. I got it, Kim. Anyway, we'll go on to the next news. So, I don't know. I'll keep you guys updated with what's going on with that. Hopefully they get it fixed with the software. But once again, there really isn't any pressure on Boeing. Seriously. There's pressure in regards to, yeah, you want to get this program working, but... And you only have a certain amount of time in August before something else is going to need that docking port up at the ISS. The lack of docking ports on the ISS seems like a very critical oversight on NASA's part. You have 3 types of spacecraft that can dock up to the ISS using those ports. Starliner, Dragon 2 Crew, and Dragon 2 Cargo. And there's only 2 ports up there that can receive them. So you have 3 spacecraft over 2 ports. You're going to have some problems. So once again, I think that was a little bit of an oversight problem on NASA. Any new Dream Chaser news lately? Nah, nothing. They've been pretty quiet, but they are steadily making progress. Software is what commands power on for the vehicle. It's kind of more like an airplane pre-flight check or pre-flight test than anything. You have to turn on certain things in certain orders, just like I said with a car. You turn the ignition into the on position, right? And you get power to certain components, like your fuel pump that primes the system, and then you start, right? And then your starter motor turns off. There's a procedure to it. But a spacecraft is a way more complicated car that flies into space. Way more complicated. Like, way more complicated. But, yeah, there is procedures, Wishio, and those procedures probably take less time than it takes to take it apart. Right, obviously, but once again, you're not thinking about that correctly. It's if they powered the spacecraft on yesterday, that means there's an indication that the problem is fixed. It's not like a binary decision here. They honestly don't want to deintegrate the spacecraft if they don't have to, but if they have to, they have to. And yes, it would take more time. Anyway, next bit of news here. So this is an article coming from Sandra Irwin from Space News here. So this is interesting.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Hey, Wendy, tier 3 76-month resub, dude. Thank you. And then Newbly had a 36-monther before that. This freaking 3 years, man. Unbelievable. So... let's read here. Did you see Eric Berger's article on the BE4? Yeah, I make it a thing not to. Yeah. But he might be right in this regard. I may have been incorrect here. I'm not ashamed to admit that. Let's see. Let's read. Let's figure out what's going on. Let's see. So, Tori Bruno says, it is taking us longer to move through this test program, and the same is true on the production part of this. United Launch Alliance underestimated the challenge Blue Origin would face in the development and testing and manufacture of the BE-4 rocket. Tori Bruno, United Launch Alliance's CEO, said August 5th, the engine program is years behind schedule, he said. But the BE-4 so far is performing well in tests, and fully assembled flight engines should be delivered within months. I expect that I will receive flight engines before the end of this year, Tori Bruno said in an interview with Space News. 2 BE-4 engines will power the first stage of ULA's new rocket, Vulcan Centaur. ULA signed an agreement with Blue Origin in 2014 to jointly fund development of the BE-4, and in 2015 announced that it would build Vulcan as its next-generation rocket to replace Atlas V and Delta IV. He said that there were more starships than BE-4s ever made. Wow, Eric Berger not missing a point to promote space, not missing a beat to promote SpaceX and denigrate another commercial provider? Jeez, please tell me more. That's lovely, Boxy. All right. 2 BE-4 engines will power the first stage of ULA's new rocket. Okay, we already got that. Blue Origin in 2015 proclaimed that the engines would be ready by 2017. Bruno said everything in the BE-4 program has taken far longer than planned. I'm not going to kid you. The engines are late, he said. Why are they late? They're late because it's taking them longer to move through the test program, and it's taking them longer to build the production engines they had planned. And why is this happening? It's happening because the testing is more complicated than they anticipated. And because we allowed ourselves as a program to have fewer test assets to work with than we originally planned. The combination of all these issues is causing us to take longer to move through the testing program, and the same is true on the production part of this. The pre-qualification program will be followed by a more rigorous qualification testing, both of which are happening in parallel to the fabrication of the flight engines. There's some risk involved in this approach, but no major issues have emerged so far. Interesting. Can I read that one more time? The pre-qualification program will be followed by more rigorous qualification testing, both of which are happening in parallel to the fabrication of the flight engines. There is some risk involved in this approach, but no major issues have emerged so far. Okay, they're testing rocket engines in parallel. Yeah, there's some risk involved in this. Yeah, okay. We have done so much testing already that we are comfortable starting the manufacturing or even finishing the manufacturing of flight engines. What we won't do is fly those engines before all the testing is done. Interesting. Okay, where was I? Sorry, I had to send a message out. We've done so much testing already that we are comfortable starting manufacturing. Okay, all right. Several BE-4 engines are currently undergoing pre-qualification tests at Blue Origin's facilities in Van Horn, Texas. The first 2 flight engines are being assembled in Kent, Washington. The 2 flight engines may or may not be finished before the qualification program is finished, said Bruno. We'll take them as soon as they're available, and we'll integrate them into a flight booster at ULA's rocket factory in Decatur, Alabama. Okay. During the pre-qualification testing, the engineers are pushing the engine above and beyond requirements, he said. That means running for longer durations or at higher power levels. It's just a good thing to do when you have the opportunity. As things stand today, the engine continues to perform well. The thrust levels are where we want them, and the efficiency of the engine is higher than we expected. The engine has been run at its minimum power level, and it's been run above its maximum power level. Okay, all right. We have many thousands of seconds across several engines, so we're feeling good about the design of the engine. Okay. Interesting. When they showed the B4 back in April 2018, I was so sure they were ready. I guess it was a prop. I mean, that was a developmental engine, Kem. Though that one of those engines that they showed was pre-qualification. Houston, thanks for the raid. Much appreciated. All right. So it looks like they've done a good deal of testing here. They just need to certify those results. Basically, when you test the rocket engine, guys, what you're looking for a bunch of things. But the test of a rocket engine is not let's put it on the stand, let's fire it, and we'll see what it does. That is a way to test, but that's not what ULA and Blue Origin are doing with the BE4s. Testing in that regard is much more like taking a final exam for school. You shouldn't learn anything new there. You should fire it, and it should do exactly what you think it's going to do. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different type of testing than the kind of screw around and find out kind of testing that you see. That's how you do it in KSP. In KSP, you put the thing on the pad, you fire it, see if it blows up. In my case, it doesn't, and it makes it all the way into space and back, and then blows up on the runway when you land it. Right? So, sorry, I'm self-burning myself because I know chat's going to do it anyway. So, those engines, Kem, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say what went wrong here. Like, now I'm kind of interested in what Eric said about it, but let's keep reading. During a new engine development, it's expected that tweaks might be needed, but hopefully what you don't find are big problems with the engine that require any kind of significant redesign. Okay? We haven't had any of those big things since we've been in our pre-qualification testing. We're deciding if we want to make minor adjustments before we go into formal qualification. Bingo. Literally the next paragraph answered exactly what I was wondering. I'll talk more about that in a second. An unspecified number of BE4 engines are going through pre-qualification, and several more will be used for the formal qualification. The first pair of flight engines will not see qualification testing, but will be hot-fired before they are delivered to the rocket factory. Testing and manufacturing, literally the same article, is more complicated than Blue Origin had planned or anticipated. Now, to be fair, Elon does talk about how much of a pain in the butt that is. So, good to know. It's just taking them longer to get through it, to actually build those engines for us as well as finishing up the testing. I'll have to read that in a second. Okay. Hey, Brim. Smoky Skies of Idaho. Ah, jeez. The flight engines will be mated with a Vulcan booster that is currently at ULA's facility in Cape Canaveral. They'll get fired one more time on the pad before the first launch. This flight readiness firing is just a one-time event. It's like a qualification test for the whole booster before it goes into the VIF where the upper stage and payload are stacked. Oh, yeah, they're going to static fire the first stage. It's called a flight readiness firing. Think about it like green running. They're going to green run a Vulcan booster on the pad, but it's only a static fire. It's only for a second. Okay. What's at stake? It's the NSSL contract. I don't... Here, if you guys want to read that part, you guys go, and I'll put that in there. We are in this together. Tori Bruno said the chatter about ULA considering ending its partnership with Blue Origin is just that. Chatter. Gee, I wonder where that's coming from. We have a solid relationship with our engine provider. We know that we are in this together. There is no mission for our new rocket without engines, and there is no practical engine fabrication capability without us as a customer for Blue Origin. He said Blue Origin has very good technical people and highly experienced rocket engine designers who know their work and know their business. They're not Green. That's not how this works. Jesus. Okay, that's not really how that works, dude. It's not some like. Okay, this is, dude. I'll get into it in a second. We got into this partnership, we anticipated that there would be a challenge in moving through a large, complicated development program and then standing up a production line for flight hardware. It has been a little bit more challenging than certainly they anticipated, but it's also been harder for them than we anticipated, and that's why it's taking a bit more time. Bruno pushed back on the suggestions that he's being protective of Blue Origin and glossing over the company's lackluster performance on the entire program. That's not the case. You can't cover things up, and if you're trying to hide things, they eventually come to light anyway, and then you lose your credibility. So I always prefer to be upfront and transparent. I'm not protecting them. They're professionals, and they can stand up for themselves. Oh, God, I love Tory Bruno. That guy's the best. Read the GAO part towards the end. Oh, okay. Further concerns were raised by the Government Accountability Office in a June report that stated a U.S.-produced rocket engine under development for ULA's Vulcan launch vehicle is experiencing technical challenges related to the igniter and booster capabilities required. Bruno said he was dumbfounded by the GAO's assessment that the engine igniter was a problem. The igniter is not a technical challenge, but a design issue, he said. Blue Origin is making the B-4 for ULA and also to power its own heavy rocket, New Glenn. About a year and a half ago, ULA and Blue Origin decided that the first BE-4s would be made with an igniter suitable for Vulcan, but not for New Glenn, which has a reusable first stage and would need a different igniter for propulsive flyback. It's always been our intention to have at first a configuration of the engine for Vulcan and then slightly different configuration of the engine for New Glenn. The igniter was one of those choices made quite some time ago, and it's certainly not a technical issue today. Give me a second. So, guys, all of this points to the BE-4 having some problems in the past. There's nothing really wrong with it right now. ULA just had to change its schedule to meet the deadline. ULA and Blue Origin had to change its schedule, having overlapping testing regimes to meet the NSSL deadline. That's the goal. As Tory Bruno said, and this is what I've been saying, everything scales around the NSSL contracts because that's ULA's cash cow. Everything. So scaling your timelines happens, but you have to really start scaling things when when something goes wrong. And it sounds, see, this is why everybody says, oh, where are my engines, Jeff? Where are my engines? Oh, they have problems. The BE-4 is a piece of junk, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so first and foremost, a methyl oxygen-rich stage combustion cycle engine is one of the most difficult engines to manufacture. There's a reason why the Russians build those, and they are the only ones that have built those for a very long time.
Discovery, go
and that's not even using methane. That's using kerosene, right? Hey, Albert, thanks for the 6-month resub. So all of this stuff, it looks like there's nothing wrong now. They just have to overlap testing to make up for the fact that there was a problem with the BE-4. Probably, judging by what we were saying, by what Tory Bruno was saying there was a problem with it in the past. So it seems like they rolled out with a version of the BE-4 right around 2018, right? And it went into pre-qualification testing, and they found a design flaw or something. And they had to go back to the drawing board with that, and that took an additional 2 years. So now you're scaling your timeline based around that 2-year redesign. And before anybody says, why does it take 2 years to design anything on the rocket engine? Rocket engines are complicated, man. You can't just change one component and hope that every other component is going to work correctly. I'll just give you an example. If there was a problem with, say it's turbine machinery. If there's a problem with the power pack or something, like your turbine blades would break, or The turbo shaft, the turbo shaft from the rocket can't take the RPMs or something, and you have to go redesigning the bearings or whatever. Changing the power pack is basically changing the entire engine. That's like if you had a car motor, for instance, right, and you change the camshaft. You're gonna get a result, but now the engine is not gonna work how it was originally intended. And anytime you do that, well, guess what? That means all the math that you did to make all the other components on the engine work, that math has to be redone. So redesigning any component like the throat, combustion chamber, injectors, nozzle, expansion ratio on the nozzle, the plumbing, turbine machinery, power pack, you change any one of those things because it failed pre-qual testing a number of years ago, you're basically have to take the whole thing apart and do all the math over again, even if you have hardware that works. So all of these problems here, all of these things that people are saying is a problem, I should say, seem like something that happened with the BE4 a couple of years ago, and Blue Origin had to redesign around that. Basically the BE4 went into pre-qual testing on the first attempt and failed, and they had a major failure somewhere. But this, once again, the way Tory Bruno is talking seems like this happened a long time ago. And a long time ago meaning 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, 2018 was 3. So if it takes 2 years to redesign the entire rocket engine, which the BE4 is a complicated motor, it does take time. And nobody in the U.S. has ever. I mean, there's not many people that have made a motor like this. SpaceX has Raptor, but Raptor's full flow. It's not oxygen rich. And then the Russians have a couple of Methalox. The Soviets before them had a couple of Methalox prototype engines that they tested in the 80s, and that's it. Other than that, nobody's ever tried to make something like this. So, if there was something that failed catastrophically in pre-qual testing, A, good thing that they caught it. B, it's going to take a second to design around it. They learned something new on the test stand, which is not what you're supposed to do. Now, is that a reflection of Blue Origin? Oh, does Blue Origin suck? No, I don't think so. People think it's really easy to harp on Blue Origin, but the reality of the situation is that, they're working on a bunch of different things in the background, guys. Blue Origin is working on New Glenn, which is going to be one of the biggest launch vehicles ever made. One of them. It's not the biggest. It's going to be one of the biggest. They're working on that. They're working on New Shepard. They're working on the National Team Lander program to an extent. We know that Blue is working on nuclear thermal prototype propulsion systems, orbital reef, wet workshop, science laboratories. They're working on a bunch of stuff in the background, guys. But point is that they started all of this all at once. So, and it's a new company. You know what I mean? Well, not a new company, but they chose to do all this all at once. So it's going to take a second to kind of scale up to that capability. Does this sound familiar? One company that kind of just does one thing for a little while, deciding to broaden their horizon in multiple facets of the economy, in this case the space economy, and start a bunch of small projects all at once, and then scale up all those projects all at once. Does this sound familiar? There's a guy that started with a bookstore, an online bookstore in the 90s. What's his name again? Jungle.com. Yes. Hey, Matt, what's going on? That sounds like Jeff Bezos, who owns Blue Origin. That sounds like his MO to me. Jeffrey Bezos, you did it. So it sounds like they had something wrong with the BE4 a couple of years ago, and they've had to redesign it, and they had to scale their testing regime to work in parallel to meet that NSSL deadline, which also makes sense with what Tory Bruno is saying, and it makes sense with what Blue Origin is saying, even though they don't really say much. There were rumors at the time of a turbo pump redesign. Well, Phil, I can tell you right now, all these problems are pointing to a critical component of the rocket engine failing. We're not talking like a sticky valve or something, or not even failing. It's not like a Blue Origin a BE-4 blew up on the test stand or something, even though that may be the case. It seems like they tried to push an engine and the engine voided itself, like when Raptor voided itself during the SN8 landing. Same kind of deal. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to end in catastrophic failure to know that something needs to be redesigned. So, if anything, that's really good on them that they caught it. And it seems like everything is going to scale correctly around the NSSL contract. Tory Bruno has adamantly said that Vulcan is going to be ready on time. It's going to be ready on time, and he'll have flight engines by the end of this year. The bottleneck and the reason why Vulcan is going to get delayed until next year is because the payloads for the first Vulcan missions, the Peregrine Lander, Dream Chaser, they aren't ready. Once again, Tory Bruno doesn't lie about this stuff, man. He said it right at the end, dude. You can't cover things up. If you're trying to hide things, they eventually come to light anyway, and then you lose your credibility. There you go. So I prefer to be upfront and transparent. I'm not protecting them. They're professionals. They can stand up for themselves. Check the Eric Berger article. It's literally about that. Yeah, I'm Jabebos. When Jabebos. So, once again, it seems like, and once again, I ain't running cover for Blue Origin either. You decide out of the blue that you're going to try to make one of the most complicated rocket engines for your orbital rocket, and you have no experience in making methyl oxygen-rich stage combustion cycles or orbital rockets. The fact that this program hasn't backfired completely in Blue Origin's face is it's a pretty damn well testament showing their commitment to the program, just like what Tory Bruno says. Guys, this is like us having no experience building cars and saying we're going to build a Ferrari on the first try. The only problem is the tire goes flat. Like, you got to understand the context of how complicated this actually is. Eric says that basically the same thing. They were running hardware poor, but have changed now to hardware rich, and we're good. Out of the blue. Yeah. Good advice for a relationship too. Don't lie. No, you're just gonna make more work for yourself later, Hip. I can change a flat tire. There you go. Diamond, 61 months. Thanks, man. So this is what bothers me. You know, even the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, is susceptible to this. Most people here have demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding about how testing this stuff goes and how difficult it is. Heck, even I don't understand the complexity here. I know it's difficult, but I couldn't give you quantitative numbers. All I have is Kerbal to go off of. And in Kerbal, the rocket engines are already made for you, and it's already complicated to figure stuff out. And then I can just change the thrust on a rocket motor like that and be like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, if what we do, if the integration and building that we do in Kerbal is any indicator about how difficult this actually is, dude, the fact that Blue was able to catch their mistake, fix it, and still be on time for NSSL is pretty damn impressive. Like, there's no other way of looking at that. That's pretty damn impressive. Yeah, I mean, Elon makes it seem easy and ruins the scale. Well,
Discovery,
dude,
go and throttle up.
SpaceX didn't try to build Falcon 9 Block 5 first. They slowly ramped to this point, believe it or not. They've just been going fast the entire time, but they had a much more iterative process to get to something like Starship, right? Started with Falcon 1. Falcon 1 was kind of a prototype for Falcon 9, and then they scaled the They wanted Falcon 1, Falcon 5, and Falcon 9. Falcon 5 would have been a Falcon 9 first stage with 5 Merlins in it and a Falcon 1 upper stage on top of that. Or was it a smaller Falcon 9 upper stage? I forget. It doesn't matter. And then they went to Falcon 9. My point is that if you look at all the engines that SpaceX has, and don't get me wrong, I think the way that SpaceX is doing this is probably the better way. And I still think that mass producing engines is the right way to do this. You have to flood the market with rocket engines. Elon just happens to be flooding the market with the most complicated engine ever created. Anyway, that's a whole different thing that we could talk about. But SpaceX had, they had the Merlin 1, Merlin 1A, Kestrel motor, Draco engine. And then they had the Merlin 1C, and then they had the Merlin 1D, and then they had the Merlin vacuum for Falcon 9. And then they had the Merlin 1D Block 1, Block 2, Block 3, Block 4, Block 5, full thrust. That's iterating over time on Merlin vacuum and Merlin 1D, and then they decided to go to Raptor with like a decade of flight experience under their belt. That's why SpaceX seemingly goes so fast, because they take very iterative steps. Right? Blue Origin just decided, BE3 tap-off cycle. BE4. And then BE7 after that. Literally, the second engine that Blue Origin has made is one of the most complicated rocket engines that you can design. Once again, and I'm not trying to run cover for them. They should have gotten this done, and they scale around NSSL. I mean, it would have been nice to see a New Glenn a little bit sooner. Not gonna lie to you, you've been saying you're gonna do that for a while. But the fact that they decided to make literally one of the most complicated engines around for their second attempt at building a rocket motor in-house and got like one or two things wrong, even got it to the point where it failed pre-qualification testing, and then they had to redesign it, and then they're still gonna have it ready on time, is still pretty damn impressive. I think people are looking at this the wrong way. And I guess that's just my opinion. There's clearly other journalists out there and other people that report space news that don't think that that's the case. But man, are those people going to be... It's going to seem, because of this type of reporting, fellas, it's going to seem like Blue Origin is just going to come out of nowhere and have tremendous capability in space. Like, seriously, New Glenn's going to come out of the woodwork. Nobody's going to see it coming, because everybody's not expecting it to be coming, because everybody reports the news that way. Like, Blue is incompetent. They have no idea what they're doing. Blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, sure. In about 5 years, the timeline is still the same, Twitch. It's just the timeline is the same. It just got shifted by a couple of years because of that problem that they had with BE4s. You always scale around production. You scale your production of your rocket around propulsion all the time. Everyone does this, including SpaceX. You saw that when they went to integrate Super Heavy, some of those Raptor engines that are on there haven't been fired. Why? Well, because they needed them for fit tests. They haven't been fired yet, but the vast majority of them have, indicating to me that after they're done doing the stack, they're going to take the thing apart and they're going to send those engines back to McGregor. How long is it going to take to test fire 5 or 6 or 7 more Raptor engines? A month, at best? So there you go. That should give you a pretty good indicator about when SpaceX is going to be ready. Everyone scales their production of rockets around propulsion. Elon literally religiously states this. Blue Origin's doing the same thing. When they do it, everybody's like, they're stupid. When SpaceX does it, everybody's like, oh, that's genius. See what I'm talking about, man? Blue Origin's going to come out of nowhere. Just like they came out of nowhere with NS-15 and NS-16, and everyone's going to be like, wow, that's ridiculous. I'm telling you, it's going to happen, and I ain't just running cover for them. I like to think that I know a little bit about how this stuff works, even a little bit, even a smidgen. You have to think about Blue's Clues, so I sit down in my thinking chair and think. So let's think. Let's adjust it. So if their timeline got shifted by about a year, right, and they still are, they're doing parallel qualification testing. So they're doing pre-qual and flight production at the same time. That means that they had to scale their timeline now to Vulcan. Vulcan was always scheduled to fly in 2020, late 2021, early 2022. That hasn't changed. The Vulcan rocket has never, at least I'm pretty sure, it never got delayed. ULA's first mission under the Phase 2 contract was expected to be flown by Vulcan in late 2022. but ULA asked to switch the mission to Atlas V as Vulcan could not be ready on time. They probably did that out of an abundance of caution. That's what the Space News article says. So, Vulcan's timeline is shifted by, what, 6 months? So, all signs here point to Blue Origin scaling very rapidly in the next 6 months. And I'm telling you, New Glenn's going to come out of nowhere in 2022. So they scaled their... Blue Origin figured out the problem, and they scaled their timelines to Vulcan, and it only ended up with a 6-month delay. Anybody that knows anything about spaceflight knows that a 6-month delay is not that big of a deal. That stuff happens all the time. Unrelated question, but I was thinking about it earlier this day. It's my understanding that Super Heavy is going to be entering the Gulf of Mexico when it launches for the first time. How high are we expecting the booster to go if it's only going to make it into the Gulf of Mexico? It's actually going to fly lower than a Falcon 9, Kelly. Super Heavy, just like the Saturn V's first stage, is about as close as you can get to a solid rocket booster in terms of performance as a liquid fuel booster. So what does that mean? Thrust. Lots of thrust. We know just from SpaceX's conservative rating of Raptor engines that Super Heavy is going to have over 40 meganewtons of thrust. That's pushing 8 to 9 million pounds of thrust. That's more than a Saturn V. That's more than SLS by a long shot. So what does that tell me? That tells me that, one, you have an extremely heavy payload on top. If you just fed me those numbers and I knew nothing about Starship, if you told me the numbers and the core diameter on the vehicle, I would tell you that your upper stage and payload are going to be very heavy. Starship is very heavy. And it's carrying 100 tons of payload. Super freaking heavy. Also, that tells me that it won't fly as far as Falcon 9, but the velocity... it'll go faster. The main engine cutoff will probably... the altitude for main engine cutoff for Super Heavy will probably be lower than Falcon 9 because Raptors, it has all that thrust. It's gonna go fast. It'll probably be lower than Falcon 9 in terms of altitude, but the velocity will be way higher. And Elon has said, the reason why I know that is because Elon has said Super Heavy's not going to need to do a re-entry burn. So that tells me that it's flying to a much lower altitude, and they cranked the thrust to 11. So this thing is going to stage lower, but the velocity is going to be way higher, which correlates very well with an ascent profile like how Ariane 5 works. Ariane 5 has those SRBs, and it gets off the pad real quick. And then they separate the SRBs, and the core stage burns for an extremely long time, even to the point where they get over the apogee and they start sinking. And the shuttle did that too, for what it's worth. The shuttle did the same thing. Shuttle's altitude actually went down during the 3 engines firing, and then it went up. Just like Ariane 5, like the space shuttle. SLS will probably do the same thing. You have a very, 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 very high TWR first stage, and an extremely efficient or decently efficient upper stage with high TWR gets you better payload mass to low Earth orbit. And then if you have a Hydrolox upper stage like the SAC or the ESC Ariane 5 upper stage, you can really go anywhere. They're trading gravity for drag losses. Pretty much, Blue Origin is hiring expensive engineers like crazy right now. They would not be making such investments unless return on investment was imminent. Kaz, like I said, everybody likes to talk about Blue Origin. Everybody likes to dump on Jeff Bezos. I get it. Does Jeff Bezos sound like the kind of guy that would have somebody running his company that's incompetent like this, as these articles are implying? There's no way in hell. There's no way in hell. You can say a lot of things about Jeff Bezos, but to say that he doesn't know how to run a business or he doesn't know how to delegate and put somebody that's in charge that knows what they're doing is idiotic. Guys, he owns the biggest business in the world. You can't say in the same sentence that he doesn't know how to run a business. He does. Bob Smith is an idiot. Okay. John, can you elaborate? They have to start showing flight hardware, ... Did you guys even listen to what I just said? Did you guys even listen to me? They need to show flight hardware. Yeah, I absolutely came here. But I'm trying to explain to you that a bump in the road previously forced them to scale their timelines. They have to scale up. They have to go faster. They are going faster. All signs here are pointing to Blue Origin. Basically, BE4s are going to flood the market by the end of the year. Yeah, that's all signs are pointing to mass production of engines and a massive production ramp on the BE4 lines. All signs are pointing to it. Yeah, they have to show flight hardware. They will by the end of the year. Oh, I don't know who's doing their PR, Vex. I don't know what the hell that's about. Jeez. Yeah, Staples, I really don't think that's what's going on. That's why I don't like these articles that have so much conjecture in them and try to play it as that Jeff Bezos has some fragile ego or something. That's... All right. Staples, I seriously believe that, you know... Dude, everyone's going to be like, how did they do that when New Glenn and these BE4s just start flooding the market? I'm telling you, by the end of this year, or maybe even early into next year, let's say like February 2022, Tori Bruno will post a picture of all the rockets in Decatur and some kind of Tori time-lapse, and there'll be like 40 Vulcan cores in there or something. Well, maybe not 40, but you'll see BE4s literally coming out of the woodwork. I'm telling you, that's what's going on. How'd your babos? Sounds like Bob didn't get the memo. I'm telling you, all right, I mean, go ahead. Everyone's going to be all surprised when BE4s start coming out of the woodwork. Everyone's going to be like, well, they don't have any, they don't know what they're doing, And then when Vulcan flies on time, like just, you know, maybe it's delayed by a nominal window of 6 months. That's nothing in terms of development. You know that. That's nothing. Everyone's gonna be like, oh, wow, they really did it. That, you know, wow, I knew they were gonna do it this entire time. Like, okay. And personally, guys, I have another theory about why Blue Origin releases these infographics. Do you remember when we watched Virgin Galactic? What did I say at the end of the Virgin Galactic cast? What the hell, man? They had a 2-hour broadcast, and maybe 5 minutes of that was spaceflight. Everyone in chat said what? Everyone in chat said it wasn't for you, EJ. It was for other people to get involved in space. It wasn't for you. It wasn't for you. Guys, I have a very sneaking feeling that those infographics aren't for us, if you catch my drift. I don't like how they trash talk everybody, though. Phil, I'm telling you, there's a calculated reason for them doing that. Oh, jeez. Don't get me started, Badger. Okay. All right, let me explain. What does Blue Origin want right now? Blue Origin wants 2 HLS options. They want 2 landers, right? They want 2 options. HLS said that there should be 2 landers and NASA only has 1. They want 2 options. So, what would you do to say that without saying it? You see what I'm getting at? Those articles aren't for us. They're for Rule 8 people. They're for Rule 8 people. They aren't for us, guys. We all know that. We all knew that already. Too bad they can only talk crap. Maybe if Jeff offered $2 billion for HLS. He did. Like, 3 weeks ago, Boxy. I understand what you're saying. You did that before. No, Ando. Blue Origin's trying to get NASA to understand that they should have 2 orbiters, and they're more importantly trying to get the people that pull the purse strings that NASA should get more money for 2, not orbiters, 2 landers. That's what those infographics are for. That's who they're for. We all knew that already. We all knew that Starship needed to be fueled a bunch of times on orbit. That's nothing we didn't know. So why would Blue do that? Why would they do that? The protest, the GAO, the Government Accountability Office protest for HLS already went. So why would they release infographics after the verdict had been reached? That doesn't make any sense. And then specifically say in said infographics that the Lunar Exploration Transport Services program is not enough to sustain 2 lunar landers. Guys, come on, put 2 and 2 together here. See what I'm talking about, man? They aren't for us. That stuff's not for us. Put 2 and 2 together. 4, 7, 8, 22. Hike. Handball. No, hand egg. But why public lobby and look like a fool? What's NASA's funding based off of, Wisp? Whether Congress sees it as useful or not, right? That's why NASA exists. What's that tied to? Public perception, man. I'm telling you, look, guys, like maybe, and if you think I'm reading too much into this, you tell me, okay? If you think I'm reading too much into this, that's fair. That's fine. I refuse to believe that something like that isn't a calculated maneuver. It's tied to public opinion. It's tied to normies. Yeah, there you go. Politicians. Are the Rule 8 people really convinced by these PDFs? Well, Rem, if they go to a Senate testimony or Commerce, Justice, and Science Committee testimony and they show those infographics, that's a really easy way to see. Yeah, Staples. They'll take the eye rolls from the space community because we don't pay them. That's what I'm saying, dudes. Like, dude, I refuse to believe it's that simple than them just having a temper tantrum. That doesn't make any sense. Now, with the suborbital thing, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I can kind of see that. But also, I don't think that's just them having a temper tantrum, dude. Richard Branson with Virgin Galactic was the first billionaire to go near space, we'll say. Like, I'm not going to start the whole carbon line. If you go back and look at that Blue Origin infographic, they say that ours actually gets into, the 100-kilometer definition of space. They're trying to market it, guys. It's marketing. The same way that, Chevy would say that, oh, Ford's design is better than ours, but we're not going to tell you that. Our Chevy is better. It's a better... Blah, 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 do whatever the heck GM does. I don't know. No, you see what I mean? You see car manufacturers do this all the time. Heck, even airplane manufacturers do this. Phone manufacturers do this. Look at this other guy's phone. This doesn't work. Ours is the one that you want. What? Like... personally, I'm not really... If your product is better, it should stand on its own, but... in this day and age, with how fast information travels, that's not necessarily the case. I found the floor plans to the building. Oh, nice. Guys, Blue is trying to... Good luck selling your product next to Starship, then. See what I mean? They have to, because they know everybody's just going to be like, SpaceX all the time. Dude, I'm telling you, like, look. At the end of the day, I think the way that SpaceX did this is way better. Like, I'll be honest. What I'm trying to do here is not necessarily defend Blue Origin or SpaceX or anything. Space tribalism is going to be the end of us. I'll tell you that right now. Space isn't a big enough demographic to be at each other's throats. We can't play brand loyalty right now. Do that when, you can buy a plane ticket to space for like $100. That's when you go and do that. Don't do that right now. Not a good idea. But truck is best because. But I lost my train of thought. Sorry. This conversation sounds familiar. But I mean, the fact that we are is going to be our undoing. Delta. Yeah, right. Space travelism is bad. And there was another thing I was saying why it was bad, but I forgot. I lost my train of thought. It almost doesn't matter since all the people that are being extremely tribal won't get close to being in the actual industry. Our product is safer than Starship. Boom, can't refute that. Yeah, right. Like, okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to, that's where I was going with it. So what I was saying is that, you know, I lost it again. I'm not necessarily, that's what I was doing. I'm not necessarily standing up for Blue Origin or standing up for SpaceX either. What I'm trying to do is understand context. I think that's the really important part. I'm trying to understand, and from what I understand and what I can surmise from what Blue Origin is doing is that it's very calculated. But it's calculated in ways that we don't understand. Except I'm trying to understand them. So I could be wrong in my analysis, but once again, why would you do that? Why would you release these infographics and take the PR hit? That doesn't make any sense. The only logical conclusion that I can come up with is that it's targeted. But it might not be targeted for us. Bad marketing? Zero. Does a company that's under the Amazon umbrella, have you ever seen a company under the Amazon umbrella have bad marketing? Think about that, dude. Whole Foods, Twitch, Amazon, AWS, you ever see them have bad marketing? You ever see any other company do this? Any other Amazon company? Any one of them? Twitch has some pretty terrible ads. What I'm saying is, would Twitch release an infographic that says, you know, oh, Facebook Live is trash, our platform is better, unless they absolutely needed to? That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. The point is that you see relative uniformity between all the other companies that are associated with Jeff Bezos. You see a relative uniformity in their ads. All of them are corny and annoying, right? And then Blue Origin comes out with these hit piece infographics things. What I'm telling you is that because that one's the oddball out, comparatively to the rest of the data set there's a reason why. Understand? Flawed example, EJ. There could be companies under the Amazon umbrella we'd never heard of because of bad marketing. Nice, Kurlani. I don't get 99% of marketing, but when I take a step back and think about it, when I try to do it, I get it. Still don't agree with it, but I get it. Crownless, I hate ads. I hate ads that are plaguing my stream, ads that plague YouTube videos, before and after, double ads, unskippable ads. I hate them, but I understand why they're there. It's a cash grab, obviously. Duh. I'm not stupid. I just don't like it.
Discovery, go at throttle.
I mean, one could argue that I'm kind of stupid. At least I look stupid. I think I'll say that. Hey, Ozako, 6-month resub. Thank you very much. I mean, SpaceX had almost a 400-foot infographic this morning. The biggest question is why Blue Origin would target people with empty purses. Meaning what, Clayton? What do you mean? The infographics? That's what I'm trying to tell you, dude. The infographics ain't for us, dude. The infographics, meaning they're not selling to the general public. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what those ads are. They aren't for us. They're for Congress people. It's basically them publicly kind of lobbying to get 2 landers. And you know what? You know what the messed up part is? I hope they succeed. Because, GrabShark, I was telling you this last night. I know you're here. This conversation sounds familiar. There is nobody in the world here that's going to convince me that more money for NASA is bad for NASA. So if they do that and they lobby to get 2 human landing systems on the books, and we have 2 lunar landers instead, and NASA gets a budget increase because of it, there's nobody that convinced me that that's a bad thing. I'm pretty sure it's not. Pretty sure more money for NASA is what we want, not less. You see what I'm talking about? It's a calculated move, even if we don't understand what that calculated move is. I also want 2 landers. I just want Blue Origin to stop taking these unnecessary shots and actually get to work. Just space. If they were unnecessary, they wouldn't do it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Everybody does something for a reason. There's a lot of money on the line here. See what I'm talking about? There's a reason. What if NASA gets funding for a giant space laser pointed at us? How do you know they already haven't, Kaz? Yeah, oh, Forza, jeez. Would that mean a full rebid on HLS? No, Kamir. I'm pretty sure Appendix... What is it? It's I always get Appendix H and Appendix N confused. I think it's Appendix N on the Human Landing System. Says that NASA could field another provider next fiscal year if they get the cash for it. I'm pretty sure that's what that says. I'd have to go look. If you want to fact check me on that one, please do. The problem is that there should have been 2 landers from the start. Now NASA has to play games to get it. Instead of the graphic, they can just talk to Rule 8. Can't they just talk to Rule 8 people? Instead of taking shots when they don't want to show how far along they are? Lols, we're talking in circles here. Yeah, they probably already went to the Rule 8 people. They probably already did that. And if they can just do that, why would they release the graphic in the first place? They have to have something on public record when they go to the Rule 8 people and say, look, this right here shows why you need 2 landers. That's, dude. Am I overthinking it? You think I'm overthinking it? I don't think I'm overthinking it. See what I'm talking about? They wouldn't release those infographics unless they absolutely have to. What do they have to prove? Right? Why? Why would you do that? They release that stuff for a reason, because the person that the person at Blue Origin that's doing their PR released this stuff for a very explicit purpose. Why would they release that stuff after the GAO? After the GAO reached a verdict for for NASA awarding SpaceX with HLS. Why would they release it after? Don't you think they'd release it while it was going on? That makes no sense. Don't you think they would release something like that when the selection was happening? No, the fact that they released these hit piece infographics after the fact tells me that it's a very calculated move. That doesn't make any sense. They're not taking shots at SpaceX, but they are trying to get the general vote to swing to 2 landers. Bingo. The only way they can do that is show why we need them in convincing the general public in a way that they understand. Exactly, man. That's exactly what I'm getting at. I have a personal objection to the can infographic and rocket engineer at the same time bit. Do you really think that they're using the same people for both of those things? No, Steiner. They probably do. Company under Bezos' company not being able to multitask? Nah, that doesn't sound like them either. I agree with you. They probably have to prove that they can get to orbit. They will. Good times. In good times, Forlorn, they will. But how do you convince the public when it's so easy to poke holes in it? I don't get it. Once again, they need something in the public record of opinion, lols. That's important. You need that. Okay, all right. Look. Down the road, there's going to be a Senate testimony or something for fiscal year 2022, right? Or 2023, or whatever the next fiscal year is. I don't know. I forget how they do things. There's going to be a Commerce, Justice, and Science Committee, And basically there's going to be some type of Rule 8 thing with an open forum where you can go and you could say, like, okay, why should we fund more HLS? Why should we have 2 options? Blue Origin needs to go to that, and they need to say, look, we released this, so like sometime in the future, let's say 8 months in the future, all right? Or a year in the future, whatever. They say, we released this infographic 8 months ago demonstrating why you need this. It needs to be in the court of public record, man. That's very important. If they just went to said testimony, right, and just pulled out all these infographics at willy-nilly, the politicians would be like, huh? What do you, oh, geez, like, see what I mean? It's a calculated move. I refuse to believe that it's not. Like, dude, corporations don't work that way, man. Like, they have people thinking about this all day, and they probably get paid way more than any of us do. Like, see what I'm saying, man? Like, dude, it's part of a push for them to get another HLS on the books. That's all this is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. Zonka, maybe a little too real in my analogy. I think we tend to underestimate just how little the broader public understands about space travel. At my old job, I had to explain to no less than 10 grown adults that something being in orbit isn't just hanging up there stationary. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's the other thing I'm wrong. Maybe. I don't think that stuff's for us, man. Those things clearly show. Those infographics are clearly targeted for people that have some base understanding of how spaceflight works. Some, but they're not experts by any means. You think it's targeted for like people like me? People like Das? You think that's for us? Why would they market to us? Doesn't make any sense. Is it just that there isn't enough of an argument to say dissimilar architecture is needed? Just space. There are probably better ways to do it, but that's the way that they chose. What I'm saying is that the way that they chose is part of a bigger calculated thing. Now, Just Space, would I run a company like this? No. No, I wouldn't do that. I would do what Elon does and let your hardware speak for itself, even if it is, non-functional. That's what I would do. I think I like this way. Look, and this is another thing that I'm talking about, man. That's SpaceX's infographic right there. That's their infographic. Right there. It ain't an infographic. That's how they roll. Does that thing work? No. Anybody that knows a little bit about spaceflight processing knows that this thing at this particular point in time is non-functional. That pad is basically a diorama at this point. It's a dud, a structural mock-up. Down the road, this will all be ready. But anybody that knows a little bit about SpaceX knows that that thing's not flying anytime soon. It's not flying within a week, that's for sure. Maybe 2 per what Elon said, right? And you have to, and once again, you have to take into account context here. SpaceX does move faster. So is it going to fly tomorrow? No. Is it going to fly in a week? No. 2 weeks? Maybe. A month? Yeah, absolutely. But that's the infographic right there. Anybody that's going to look at this thing, politician, you, me, we look at that and we go in with a positive bias because it's flight hardware, right? And Blue Origin has infographics, Don't get me wrong. You got people in chat have been saying this entire time they have to show flight hardware, and I agree with you on that. They need to show something. What I'm telling you is that they're going to be able to do that in another couple of months. And there's no cargo bay, no fairing, no life support. Exactly. That's the infographic. How is that any different? I mean, well, other than being real, other than being tangible, right? And that's something that Eric talked about in his article too. Hardware-rich programs, right? SpaceX runs hardware-rich, and that's the infographic. Blue Origin is not running hardware-rich right now, but they will be, so in the meantime, they have to do it a different way. See what I'm talking about? And Eric, like, as much as I freaking hate admitting this, Eric's actually right in that regard. He's absolutely correct. Another thing to say is that infographics and jabs like this kind of ruins the notion of we're all in this together in team space. I think that's a very valuable thing, and I don't want the aerospace industry to lose it. Yeah. See, Just Space, Do you want me to show you the infographic? Here. I'll show you. Peep this. Let's go find it. I can find it real quick. Let's go to... let me check it real quick. Where are we? Let me see. Let me see if my theory is right. Here's the infographic. Lunar Starship, immensely complex and high risk. There's an unprecedented number of technologies, developed operations that have never been done before for Starship to land on the moon. That's right. Once again, but SpaceX moves quickly, and they will solve those problems. This includes developing Super Heavy, not only the largest launch vehicle stage ever produced, but one that has yet to be one that has to be reusable. And Starship, the first ever reusable second stage. Then the two systems must work together. A launch site in Boca Chica that has never conducted an orbital launch, that's kind of loaded. Must demonstrate their ability to do so 7 to 11 times within 1 week with 1 week increments. That's correct. And cryogenic fluid transfer, a process that also never been done. It's never been done, but NASA's paying SpaceX to research it for them. They're paying you guys to do the same thing last time I checked. If somebody wants to fact check me on that one too, I'm pretty sure that NASA gave Blue Origin under Next Step 2 a bunch of pioneering technologies that includes on-orbit refueling, but I could be wrong on that one. Must work to refuel up to 100 metric tons of propellants from Starship to Starship. That also requires development of a new tanker Starship variant. Finally, for just a single Starship lunar landing, this must all be done no more than 10 times flawlessly. This is so that the Starship can get to the surface and back with a single stage ascent and descent vehicle without dissimilar redundancy in its abort engines. Man, they had a lot to say about Starship, but not a lot to say about themselves. National Team's architecture only requires 3 launches and is flexible to fly on multiple existing launch vehicles with far fewer in-space rendezvous. Further, the system is entirely built on heritage systems and proven technologies that are flying today. Let's see. High risk. Let's see what we got. What does that come from? From NASA's source selection statement for HLS, while I find the positive aspects of SpaceX's technical approach to be notably thorough and meritorious, these aspects are, however, tempered by its complexity and relatively high-risk nature. I acknowledge the immense complexity and heightened risk associated with the very high number of events necessary to execute the front end of SpaceX's mission. And this complexity largely translates into increased risk of operational schedule delays. Now, here, my question to you is this. Do they ever say that it can't be done? Do they ever say that NASA shouldn't do it? No, they're talking about risk assessment. That's right. They're correct in that regard. Now, don't get me wrong. I think what they're not factoring into here is that SpaceX moves very, very quickly. They're not factoring that in. I think SpaceX can get Lunar Starship done on time. I honestly do. But once again, I'm not playing favorites here. I'm trying to understand. Right? Exactly. Papa Bear, exactly. That graphic isn't trying to say that it can't be done with Starship. That graphic is trying to say that scheduling makes it high. It makes it high risk. Basically, saying it's high risk to get done in 2024, and we should field 2 landers to accommodate that risk, which is correct. Like, once again, like, I agree with that. That makes sense. Ain't nobody gonna sit here and convince me that having 2 ways to get to the moon is better, is not as good as having 1. They're right in that regard. Which, that goes back to what I'm saying. This graphic ain't for us. This graphic is them to have them try and see, for them to basically try and show people that you need 2 ways to get to the moon and NASA should select another lander. That's what I'm getting from this. And once again, if you think that's thin, if you think that's a stretch, tell me. I'm interested in what you guys have to say. Sample collection failed for Perseverance. Oof. They kind of hurt their case in my opinion. Looking at all the technology and major advances we as taxpayers get with the Starship system as opposed to just buying upgraded 1960s tech all at a lower cost. Pete, viable argument. Yeah, that's what I mean. If you think I'm connecting too many dots and it's too thin? You tell me. Because, guys, I'll be honest with you, and I know this is against, like, the court of the space community's public opinion. I want 2 landers. I think they're right, and I think they're right to release stuff like this. And I honestly can say that, and then in the same breath, I can acknowledge that I love Starship. Starship's the best. I want Starship to work, and I want it to work really well, and I think it will. I love that thing, man. I like both of these systems. I want both of these systems because, like I said, it goes back to what I'm saying, man. Ain't nobody gonna sit here and tell me that having less rockets and less ways to do a task in space is better in the long run. That's not true. So if for whatever reason SpaceX doesn't get those things done, we have another way to do it. So the end goal is noble, but the means are fishy. And Rem, all that goes back to, and I mean, look at this, man. Look at that infographic. You have to have a fundamental understanding of orbital mechanics to understand that infographic. That would mean nothing to a person that knows nothing about delta V and TWR and how all that stuff works. If you play Kerbal, you'll understand that graphic. That's what I'm getting at, man. It's targeted. They're targeting a certain demographic on purpose. I personally think they're targeting politicians to get them to field 2 landers. And good, I hope they succeed, please. That would be really nice. Page 15 for NASA's opinion on how risky it is. They do think Starship is a risk, and it is a risk. The one contingent in this entire thing is that SpaceX moves at light speed compared to other people in the industry because of their rapid prototyping. And that's why I think they'll do it. I'm confident in SpaceX. Yeah, it's high risk. High risk equals high reward. See what I'm getting at? Out of interest, does Blue Origin have a counter the fact that developing Starship directly progresses to get humans to Mars? Now, see, Quark, that's what I would talk about. If I was going to release an infographic, that's what I would talk about. I wouldn't necessarily badmouth Starship. I would say 2 ways are needed, which is what Just Space was talking to me about. I agree with you on that one. I wouldn't do that this way, but I love how they made Starship red. They made all the Starship's trajectory and everything. They made it all red. That's funny. Red is bad. Red is bad. Like, infographics, man. That's funny to me. Okay. I'm good, T-Man. How are you? Just look at how many things NASA's highly risky to the national team in that document. Oh, yeah. I mean, both of these ways are not... Balxy, and that feeds into a bigger thing. Both of these ways are not what NASA wanted. NASA wanted a 2-stage lander. 2-stage lander with a reusable ascent module, and the ascent module would be a transfer module. Basically, NASA wanted Altair. Yeah, they wanted Altair, and they didn't get either of those things. I totally agree. I also want 2 landers, and the info there is accurate, but they desperately need to show concrete progress. Not comparing others and telling us that their system is better. Show us, not tell us. And once again, that feeds back into what I was saying. They can't yet. That's the only reason they do this. Just Space. Because if they had the hardware right now, they would show you. Right? And it goes back to what started this whole thing. The whole thing, Tori Bruno basically said that they're going to be ready on time. They're doing testing in parallel. Pre-qual, qual, and flight testing in parallel. So that tells me that there's a scaled timeline there. Which tells me that all signs are pointing to Blue Origin massively ramping up in the next 6 months. Their production. Yeah, they're massively going to ramp. That's what that tells me. So the only reason they post an infographic like that is because they don't have the hardware right now. But that doesn't mean that they won't in the future. Because, once again, what Tori Bruno is saying, and if you go look at Blue Origin's hiring page, look at how long that list is. They're ramping. They're going to ramp. I really, really hope so. New Glenn is just a cool rocket. Perseverance sample collection failed. Wrecked. Yep. How did NASA expect a sustainable lander if they wanted an expendable part with 3 stages? Well, the transfer stages and the ascent modules, Velo, are reusable. Remember how I told you that NASA's also paying Blue Origin to look at fuel transfers? Under Next Step 2. They awarded a contract to Blue Origin. I just forget what it was. I think it was for fuel transfers as well, but 497 open careers with Blue. It's funny the NASA quote they chose. That's basically a few lines below. However, these concerns are tempered because they only entail operational risks in Earth orbit and can be overcome more easily than in lunar orbit, where an expected event would create a much higher risk to the loss of mission. Finn, I don't think that SpaceX's way is the lunar starship is bad. In fact, I think having two completely dissimilar architectures to be able to get all the way to the surface of the moon is the right move. I like SpaceX's way. I like the national team with SLS. I like their way too. Both of these are very, very good ways. Very good ways to do this. The SpaceX lander looks stupid. Okay. Rover is collecting empty tubes. Oh no. Also sustainable in an economic and operational perspective, not reusable. It's economically sustainable, and how do that's another thing to take into account. The Artemis program, the entire Artemis program is about sustainability. What do you think that means? You're right. I think you're correct. It's sustainable via economic and operational, in the same way that ULA won't pursue reusability. Because making expendable rockets is more sustainable. Right now. I don't think that's going to be sustainable in the future, but, I mean, once again, I might be letting my SpaceX fanboy show a little bit too much. All right. Can we move on? Sure. Why not? Here, check this out. Whoop. This is coming from Mike Sheets over at CNBC. Rocket Lab is moving the launch of NASA's Capstone CubeSat mission to New Zealand from Virginia. It's scheduled to lift off in the fourth quarter of 2021. It sounds like the Wallops Island pad is not going to be ready in time for the Capstone mission. Capstone is Rocket Lab sending a small satellite into a rectilinear halo orbit to basically find the right orbit that Gateway is going to go in. It's a precursor for the Gateway mission that SpaceX is going to launch with the habitation and logistics outpost and the power and propulsion module on Falcon Heavy in 2024. It's a precursor mission to that. It's basically going and finding the final orbit that Gateway should be in. It's cool. Great mission. The flight termination system is not ready. AFTS certification issues. Wrecked. Is this the first Artemis mission? Yeah, actually, I think so. If you count EFT-1, then no. The exploration flight test, which was the heat shield test for the Orion spacecraft, not really. It's the first commercial lunar payload service mission. The commercial lunar payload services program is a bunch of precursor missions to the Artemis program. Amongst other things, finding good landing sites on the moon that have water ice for in situ resource utilization, finding the landing sites for the Artemis program, finding the orbit that Gateway needs to be in. These are all precursor missions, like the Surveyor and the Ranger program was for the Apollo missions. I demand Beck's head on a stake. Wait, what? Like a Pathfinder satellite. That's right. But now you misunderstood. The quote from NASA's Blue Origin choice was very negative, taken out of context when leaving out the rest of this paragraph. Finn, they gotta... I mean... Finn, yeah, you're right. It's out of context. And once again, I understand that. You're correct. But if you're trying to get somebody to field 2 landers, you don't mention that part, right? And I think that's where people are getting annoyed, to be honest with you. But that feeds into my theory. They knew that they would get this type of reaction by releasing an infographic like that. Which leads, once again, goes back to what I was saying. It's not for us. They're trying to basically court public opinion and get 2 landers on the books for the Artemis program. And you know what, man? I hope they succeed. I hope they do it. I hope they do it. Really do. I really hope they get that done, man. I'm actually rooting for them. As screwed up as those infographics are, I actually hope they do it. That would be a huge funding boost for the Artemis program. Please do that. Please do that. That would be much more sustainable. Oh, jeez. All right, here, check this out. This next one's coming from Firefly. Take a look. Firefly announces a new line of business dedicated to supplying rocket Wait, hold on. Firefly announces a new line of business dedicated to supplying rocket engines and other spaceflight components to new space customers. It'll be fun to see the SpaceX fanboy meltdown. It's Bob Bear. It's the same, dude. And don't get me wrong, I'm a SpaceX fanboy, bro. I love what Elon Musk is doing. I want him to succeed, probably more than the national team, dude. But it's like what Tory Bruno was saying. If you're not upfront and you're not impartial about this, your credibility gets destroyed, and people won't listen to you. I can think of a couple people that have done that. So I have to be impartial, man. I want SpaceX to succeed, dude. I'm a huge Starship fanboy. As a shuttle fan, I love the space shuttle, and Starship's going to vindicate the space shuttle and show that reusable spaceflight is the way to go. Elon is 130% correct in that regard. 154% correct in that regard. Hopefully it doesn't end that way. I want all the rockets, man. And, dude, people are going to have a meltdown when New Glenn comes out of nowhere. It's going to be really funny to watch. Just like all these people that badmouth SLS, they're going to be the biggest cheerleaders when Artemis 1 goes off. Hilarious. We even saw it happening with the stacking inside of the VAB. You know, they went to stack inside the VAB. Everyone's like, oh my God. Oh, SLS, this is awesome. Look at how cool this is. Those are the same people last year saying that it's stupid and we should cancel it. Save your breath, man. Jeez. All right. Firefly announces a new line of business dedicated to supplying rocket engines and other spaceflight components to new space customers. I want to learn more. I only trust SLS for the memes. All right, that's fair. Memes are fair game. The memes are fair game. That's fine. Fair weather rocket fans? Yep. Oh, look at those reavers. Sweet. What do we got here? Cedar Park, Texas. Firefly Aerospace, a leading provider of economical and dependable launch vehicle spacecraft and in-space services, today announced the launch of a new line of business dedicated to supplying rocket engines and other spaceflight components to the emerging new space industry. Our goal with this line of business is to become the tier 1 supplier of components to the new space, said Tom Marcusic, CEO of Firefly. Our component sales business model has inherent advantages over businesses that focus on a single rocket or narrow range of components. There you go, lols. Oh, that's a good idea. That's a really smart move. Not just optimizing rockets, but optimizing the subcontracting components. Guys, there is a huge cottage industry that people do not know about. There's a huge cottage industry to fittings, bolts, nuts, wire tie-offs, pipes, plumbing, valves, all that stuff that you need to make the rocket come together. There's a huge cottage industry out there for this stuff. Literally billions of dollars of revenue. That's actually a really smart move by Firefly. That's really smart to create common components like that. So Firefly will manufacture a Keralox valve, right? Or kerosene valve for this, and then they'll have a Hydrolox valve that's based off of that, and then a Methalox valve. They're subcontracting components and making components that anyone can use. That is a really, really, really smart way of bringing down the price of rocketry. You flood the market with subcomponents, like how General Motors floods the market with LS engines. Very, very good analogy, actually, right there. It's not modular rocket engines, they're modular components from what I understand. So I have a question. What is the pollution cause for all the rockets? How do they combat that? It's a drop in the bucket, Shadowman. If you want to talk about carbon emissions, you should go. Spaceflight is nothing, even if we flew them a lot. Jet airliners and cruise and container ships are the ones that are doing the most damage. Is there any standards in rocket engines? I don't know, Vasya. I would imagine that there is, to an extent, not because of a standardization of parts between like countries or whatever, but there is physics. Rockets need to very much conform to the laws of physics, and such stringent there's only, okay, that's not a right way to say that. There's only so many ways you can do it. So rocket engines have a unified kind of standard because of the physics involved, right? Because There's only so many ways you can make a kerosene engine. There's only so many ways you can make a car engine, right? Standardizing certain components, there might be no official like standardization between like the US, Russia, China, Europe, or whatever, but there is certain materials that you have to make things out of because of physics, right? So I actually want to keep reading this. Let's see what we got. Firefly is unique in that it not only builds and operates spaceflight vehicles such as the Alpha rocket, but will also become a premier sourcing partner for other new space companies to produce the components that are used in those vehicles, helping to lower the barrier of entry into the new space market. Through the manufacture of their own vehicles, Firefly will establish flight heritage for all components before supplying them to other companies, providing customers with high confidence and low risk, as the components will have been fully proven in spaceflight missions, not just ground tests. Firefly Aerospace is the name of the company. Their Alpha rocket is actually it's on Slick 2 at Vandenberg right now. They're doing testing with it. The component business plan has the advantage that there is automatically a core customer, Firefly's spacecraft and launch vehicle divisions. As the company adds external customers, it will allow them to manufacture increasingly large number of the same components, creating economies of scale for production efficiency and cost reduction. Not as good as another season, but it'll do. I agree with you. We initially focused external sales on Firefly's rocket engines, which we believed to provide the best cost performance in the industry. Initial demand has been strong. Really? With external orders already exceeding the quantity of engines that Firefly was building for use on its own launch vehicle, Alpha, said Eric Salwan, the CRO of Firefly. He also added, Firefly also has strong expertise in the design and production of carbon fiber composite structures. We are currently in active negotiations to supply composite components such as COPVs to external customers. While Firefly is launching this line of business based on the components developed in-house, it plans to expand its offerings to include a number of components developed by their partners, creating a new space component marketplace with a complete line of products, allowing companies to procure and have components delivered from a single source. It's actually a really, really, really smart way to do that. Interesting. That's like, can you imagine if they mass produce COPVs? COPVs are a pain in the butt to manufacture. They suck. They suck to make those things. It takes forever. Just like fairings. Fairings take forever to make because the way that the COPV is made and the way that a fairing is made is not that far off. A COPV is usually aluminum or titanium. An aluminum or titanium pressure vessel wrapped in carbon fiber. Because you're introducing a carbon fiber process into it, it does take some time. Because you have to put the carbon fiber into an autoclave and then bake the thing in a freaking huge easy bake oven. And then take it out and then work on it from there. Mass producing COPVs that's not a bad idea. Maybe SpaceX told them to make and mass produce them. Well, the interesting thing there from that article, is that we initially focused external sales on Firefly's rocket engines. So those are Reaver engines up here, those things, which we believe provide the best cost performance in the industry. Initial demand has been strong, with external orders already exceeding the quantity of engines that Firefly was building for use on its own launch vehicle. I do, Hazanku. You did say that, yeah. In fact, Hazanku, I don't know why anybody hasn't decided to do this. Ditto. Our rocket team has spent 2 years trying to make a carbon fiber fin with limited success. We are switching to aluminum. Dude, that's really smart, man. I can think of another company off the top of my head that makes subcomponents for cars, and that doesn't even make a car but makes billions of dollars off of the car industry. Yeah, remember these guys? Yeah, Bosch makes tons of electronic components for cars. American, German, Japanese, it doesn't matter. Fuel pumps, spark plugs, coil packs. They make all these sub-assemblies, and they never made a car, but they make tons of components for cars. So there is, if the space industry really takes off, yeah, that's actually not a bad place to position yourself. It's a pretty smart idea. Yeah, Delco, AC Delco, same thing. I mean, there's even Italian design centers that design houses that design bodies for cars. There's Bertoni, there's Pininfarina, excuse me. It's not a piñata. There's what else is there? There's Bertoni, Pininfarina, there's Gia. Del Taco! Wait, that's something different. I said that years ago Rocket Lab should do this. Zonku, maybe somebody from Firefly was watching the stream. Maybe they listened to us. Fresh avocado! My entire suspension is made up of a Bilstein kit. There you go. Dude, you know what, guys? And, I'm not trying to knock Firefly, but I'm amazed nobody thought of this. I'm telling you, there's if you need, a COPV, I don't know necessarily about a COPV, but you need, a valve or plumbing or whatever. All that stuff gets subcontracted out, even at SpaceX. I mean, how many parts did we see them make at Starbase, at Boca Chica? You see parts come in on trucks. Even parts of the launch tower, those big steel sub-assemblies, even parts of the test stands, they're all contracted out. Hey, Just Space, I just got a really good idea. Barbara Nichols for turbo pumps? I think so. Yeah, was it? Yeah, I think so. Ooh. I'm just gonna put that one in my pocket. Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm gonna write that down. That's a write it down and look into that later idea. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and save that one. Well, you can't just leave us hanging there. Right. Would you order a test stand from a grain silo manufacturer? Maybe. Okay, I saved my good idea as goodidea.jpeg.txt. Yep, see, it's funny. Let me guess. McMaster car for rockets? No, not really. What is that, goalie? On this day in history, SpaceX caught the fairing. Cool, cool. Let me know if you see a rocket Radio Shack. Actually, farming out... Dude, that's another good idea. Standardizing avionics. But I'm pretty sure they don't, unless the commercial market really takes off, I'm pretty sure subcontracting your avionics and mass producing them is probably not a good idea. Because if you're using that type of technology to launch into space, that's a pivotal subcontracted thing that if the avionics malfunctions, then all your rockets malfunction. Probably not a good idea. Just Space, shoot me a message on Discord. I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Make the tools for the tools. Kind of. But, I mean, that means making, like, CNC machines. So, not sure how smart of an idea that is. But there's also the fact that you can launch into space with it. You can do other things with that kind of avionics. Yeah, that avionics is very, very ITAR. So, probably not a good idea to do that. All right, so next bit of news here. Boop. Happy Friday to Antares. No, that's actually what it's Friday. The Northrop Grumman rocket made its journey to the pad this morning ahead of its scheduled launch Tuesday, August 10th, 5:56 p.m. The Cygnus spacecraft inside will carry science and supplies to the space station. Yes. The on-ramp. Send friend request on Discord, okay. There you go, Just Space. Just saying. Hang on. What do you think of that? That's why I didn't. That's why I didn't say anything. That's why I didn't say anything. You think something like that's doable? Dude, I wouldn't even know where to start with an idea like that. But it's not a bad. Maybe I'll have to talk to some people. Just got back online for the first time in a few days. You saw Everyday Starbase Factory Tour. How cool was that? Fangloriously, I could listen to Elon talk about production scalability and his philosophy behind it for a good amount of the day. Yeah. Let's put it this way. Would you need millions of dollars to do the idea? Yeah, probably, Jeff. Just Space, what do you think? You'd need a good amount of cash to get that done. But it could be useful. I'd need an investor if I was going to do that. Yeah. Yeah, just that's not a bad way to do that. Here, guys, just excuse me for 1 second. lot of effort. Take a lot of effort. I'm thinking about it. Give me a second. Like, how much would this really cost? So, what I'm trying, dude, I don't want to say my idea because it's a good one. Like, it's very rare that I actually do this, but I actually had a pretty hard light bulb moment. Does Starship really need orbital refueling for the moon trip? Well, David, it really depends on what you're carrying. It depends on what Starship is carrying. If Starship is carrying 2 or 3 people and all the environmental control systems to get out there, no. You probably might need to do 1 refuel. Starship is rated at 100 tons, but is it rated for 100 tons to the lunar surface? If you're going 100 tons to the lunar surface, you're going to need to refuel a lot. A lot. But it really is dependent on what you're sending to the moon. A lunar starship probably doesn't have a payload mass of 100 tons. It's probably more like 20 to 30. Like, there's only so much you could jam into 1,000 cubic meters. We did the math on this the other day. If you wanted to jam 100 tons of lead into Starship's payload bay, you'd be taking up about 2/3 of it. Now, if we're launching a lunar starship, what's a lunar starship going to have? A couple of airlocks, a couple of beds, the environmental control and life support systems, a couple of water tanks, a pressure vessel for the whole thing. Is that going to weigh 100 tons? Probably not. Probably not. Right? Probably. There's no way. There's no way all of that would weigh 100 tons. Heck, the space shuttle's entire mass with... Okay, if you could somehow take the space shuttle and glue it with its engines, with the engines, you could glue that to the top of Starship, where the payload bay should be. Starship, with 5 to 10 refueling flights, depending on what was in the shuttle's payload bay, could move the space shuttle to the surface of the moon. The shuttle weighs 62 tons. Starship could yeet the space shuttle to the moon. If it really, like, that's the weight we're talking about here. The shuttle is not light, right? Starship has about 1,000 cubic meters of payload volume. There's no way that a lunar starship is going to have 100 tons of anything in the payload bay. There's no freaking way. Like I said, couple of airlocks per the HLS design standards. They need 2 airlocks. They want redundant airlocks. A docking port to dock with Orion up at the nose, and all the systems associated with that. All the avionics for the thing. Places for astronauts to sleep. Science equipment. There's no way. You could pack that thing to the brim with like all the science experiments that are on the ISS, and you still wouldn't get anywhere near 100 tons. So, does it have to refuel 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times? It depends on what you put in Starship's payload bay. It really depends. Yeah, floating, maybe. So that show they did it For All Mankind. Yeah, no, the shuttle used its orbiter maneuvering systems to somehow, which have 400 meters a second delta V, to somehow conjure 4,000 meters a second out of it to get it to the moon. Yeah, just space. It really depends. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on where you're going. Starship, if you launch say you put a Mercury capsule inside of Starship's payload bay and tried to launch that, it could probably get that to the moon by itself. Yeah. I mean, you have 100 tons payload capacity. And what does a Mercury capsule weigh? 1? Yeah, it wouldn't need to refuel. It could get that right to the surface, no problem. For All Mankind, they had orbital refueling. Yeah, sure. SpaceX needs an orbital fuel station that they refuel on the regular. Keep the station topped off. Not a bad way to do it, MotoKid. They might be... Dude, I've heard whispers of them working on a tanker Starship. I mean, well, we know that Starship has a bunch of different variants, but yeah, I've heard rumors of them working on a tanker. You gotta remember, Elon wants Starship to be like an airplane. Okay? So... check this out. Here. He wants it to be like an airplane, and I think he wants it to be like an airplane in more ways than we think. Hang on one second. Let me back it out for a moment. How about... Here, look. Give me one moment. Okay. So, look at this plane. Do you guys know what this plane is? AJ-10-190s, T-Man, yep. It's an MD-11. Is that the same plane as this? Also, F-15s and F-16s. It's the blue one. Largely, yes. Nope. Yes. No. That's the tanker variant. That basically took all the space where the passengers are and put fuel tanks there instead. It's the same plane, but it ain't the same plane. Starship's gonna have variants like that. So there's gonna be a tanker starship, and there's gonna be a passenger starship, and then there's gonna be a lunar starship, and then there's gonna be I don't even know what else. A cargo starship. Why does the gray one look shorter? This could have an extended fuselage depending on the type of plane, but they're the same thing. That's what Starship's gonna be like, dudes. And speaking of that, here, look at these pictures. To cap off space news, look at these pictures. Deep space Starship sending things to the outer solar system. Yep. Last. Lunar missions will go as follows. Propellant depot, Starship up. About 10 tankers to fill up the depot ship. Lander goes up and refuels at the depot ship. Yep. In an effort to make refuel possible in one go, no need for the 10 flights. Yeah, I get you, Motorkid. Mm-hmm. Hard to beat the sight of a Starship stack at sunrise. Yeah, I know what you mean. So I've discovered where all the 10 mil sockets go. Filthy creatures. Nice, Tessa. Starship convertible. Yeah, maybe. Hey, Greg, what's going on? Look at these pictures. Oh, man. Yeah, they took it off, guys. Oh. Dude, that's amazing. I'm sorry, that's really freaking cool. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. Oh, come on, just Elon, just put some windows right here to make it look like an airplane, please. I don't even care if they don't do anything. Just put some shuttles. Just put some shuttle windows there for me, man. Just please do it. Please do it. Put a cryo shell on the Starship and you got yourself a fuel depot. Yeah, pretty much. You watched it live stream. It was slow but beautiful with the sun rising. Ah, yeah. Just paint the windows on. Yeah, Kaz, that's fine. Just how about in the future we have a Starship where they paint the backside to look like a space shuttle? Just do it. I don't care if it's non-functional. Just paint the back to look like the shuttle. That would be awesome. There's a camera pod on ship 20. Oh yeah, there it is. Oh man, dude, that is so freaking cool. Oh my goodness. I want a NASCAR style Starship with headlight stickers, yeah. Or the shark mouth on the side, like an old P40 or something. Oh man. Give it some World War II bomber paint. Yes! Yeah! Dude, great minds. Whoosh. Big googly eyes. Oh my goodness. Oh man. Yep, there's that camera pod. I wonder why they don't have one on the other side, Thomas. Huh. I would absolutely hang from the crane to paint that for free. Can you imagine if they have like graphics on the side, like World War II bombers or a whale? That would be awesome too, like the Beluga. See a frickin' yeah, exactly like that. Bio. See a frickin' Starship flying with a Memphis Belle logo on the side. That would be pretty freaking cool. Give it some pinup nose art. And the bomb marks would just be missions flown, like what they did with the Dragon. They put a bunch of ISSs on it if it's been there before. Dude, you know what the messed up part of this is? That's not that far off from being an actual thing. Once again, Starship has 100-ton payload capacity, man. It's a lot of ample room to add stuff, and that's the benefit of having a reusable system. When you design for reuse, you over-engineer. I will still say to this day, even if you filled up all of Starship's usable payload volume with just fuel, it still has enough to get into space. That 100 tons is an over-engineering mark. It's over-engineered on purpose. Elon said on Twitter today, actually, I'll go into it. He said on Twitter today that Starship in expendable mode, could theoretically put 150 tons into orbit. Do you think Starship has 50 tons of of fins on it and tiles? No way. There's no way. Maybe like 20 to 30, something like that. Maybe these are napkin numbers. But it's over-engineered, guys. You could paint it, sure, no problem. Now, like on the shuttle, like with the shuttle with the external tank, they painted it white on the first two shuttle missions, right? And they figured out that you didn't need to paint it. And them not painting it saved them about 2,000 pounds worth of paint. See what I'm talking about? Starship's over-engineered like that on purpose because it needs to be able to move whatever into space. Anything and everything. Fuel, raw materials, I guess, if you needed to. I don't think they're going to do that, but it could. It needs to move anything into space. And once again, you could paint it. There's no way. Like, how much paint, if you painted the backside of this, how much paint is that realistically going to be? 1,000 pounds? So 500 kilos worth of paint? 1,000 kilos worth of paint? 2,200 pounds of paint? That's how much they needed to cover the entire external tank. You could paint some graphics on this. That would be sick. The Texas Raiders B-17? Hell yeah, man. The booster catch is going to be mental. I will short circuit when I see that happen, Just Space. When I see that damn thing catch one of those, I will... You know what's probably going to happen, dude? When I see that happen, and the thing catches it, I'm probably just going to sit there and go, oh, hey! Oh, that's really cool. Oh, would you look at that? Because I will have gone so... Like, the hype will go from, like, crazy to ridiculous hype to Falcon Heavy to screaming at it, right? Just divide by zero. I'll just be like, oh, that's pretty neat. That's pretty cool. Falcon 9 is cooler IMO. I mean, that's good Ionut if you want a rocket that's less capable, sure. Why does Elon Musk's brother look like a dollar store Matthew McConaughey? I don't know. What? I don't know. Kimball's cool, man. Didn't they paint the SRB at some point on the shuttle? Only with instrumentation markers. Yeah. Just want to say I'm freaking excited for the Super Heavy launch. You mean you'll have integer wraparound levels of hype? Yeah, exactly. My brain will not be able to process that. Dude, even when Falcon 9s land, man, even when they land, I'm still, you know what's crazy? Like, I see the rocket, and I know what it's doing. I understand what it's doing. I understand the physics behind that, like more than the average person, I'd say. I know what it's doing. And the fact that I know what it's doing impresses me even more. Like, somebody could look at that and they've never seen that before. They see the rocket land and they're like, oh, that's pretty neat. The fact that I know just what the grid fins are doing and how they're cutting through the air and how the attitude control systems work and how the rocket engine fires in supersonic retro propulsion, my brain divides by zero because I understand what those systems are doing, and the fact that they all come together to work like that to get a first stage back down blows my mind. That is an incredible amount of things needing to go right to get that thing back, and SpaceX does it like they do it like it's normal. It's ridiculous. Free rocket catch, I'll pee my pants. Yep. Yeah, it's absolutely insane, man. When that super heavy lands, I'll know what it's doing. I understand how big that thing is, and I understand the scale involved. It'll blow my mind. I'll literally blow a gasket. I'll just be like you guys gotta watch to make sure smoke doesn't come out of my ears or something. So this guy tried a shortcut but failed. It kind of worked. He saved it. Road closure is posted for Monday. Unknown what they'll be moving. My brain will divide by 0 when this happens. I mean, dude, look at it. That's ridiculous. That is. Imagine Tori Bruno looking at these daily accomplishments and feeling really unnerved. Skogs, he doesn't care. Tori Bruno don't care. If anything, he cheers them on. People ask him about it all the time on Twitter. Dude, they cheer him on. He cheers them on. He says, dude, I wish them success. That's a really hard thing that they're trying to do. I hope they do it. He says that all the time. Tori Bruno's basically... You guys remember those Dos Equis commercials? The most interesting man in the world? Tori Bruno is the most interesting man in the world. Yeah, he's that guy. Would the most interesting man in the world badmouth a competitor? No. Why? Because he doesn't need to. He's the most interesting man in the world. It would probably be more propellant farm stuff. Need that built before we can have a launch. Yeah, Proxy, the pad is nowhere near finished. Just because you can stack doesn't mean the pad's operational. Take it from somebody that likes making launch pads in KSP. Just because you can stack doesn't mean you can launch, man. And don't get me wrong, Kerbal isn't an end-all be-all rule of thumb for how complicated a pad is. But if you've ever played KSP, you know how hard it is to get a rocket into space on, like when you're new to the game. I know how hard it is to get a rocket into space in real life, and I can scale that difficulty to KSP pretty well, right? Like if it's this hard in KSP, it is a million times harder in real life. With that being said, building launch pads is pretty damn difficult. And I've never built a launch pad in real life, but I know the Delta V involved with getting a spacecraft into space in real life. And using that kind of analogy, I can get a pretty good rule of thumb on how hard it is to build a launch pad. And you know what? If you watch Tim Dodd's interview with Elon, shameless plug for that, he said that sometimes the pad that launches the vehicle is more complicated, if not as complicated as the vehicle that it's launching. That's something I've been saying for years. Really nice to hear him say that, actually. He doesn't always get engines, but when he does, he uses smart reuse. Stay thirsty, my friends. Imagine this, you covering the first human landing on Mars on stream is becoming a real possibility. Yep. Part 2 is dropping tomorrow, by the way. Nice. But catching a rocket in midair is a piece of cake, right? Yeah. Yeah, a little bit on the difficult side. Is the rocket now in its final stack state before launch? It's already been taken apart. They already took Starship off of it. Once again, that's their infographic, dudes. That's crazy. Will you be going to Mars to watch the first Mars landing? No? Maybe I'm being dumb, but I don't understand why a pad would be complicated. Can you explain, please? Okay, Gorthon. A pad has to do everything that a rocket does. It has to hold fuel. It has to be able to move the fuel around. It has to be able to drain fuel. Right? You have to be able to fill and drain. Integrate and deintegrate. It has to hold a rocket up, which is absurdly heavy. It can literally do everything that the rocket can do, and a little bit more, except launching. It can't launch into space. The pad does everything that a rocket can do, but it stays on the ground. And the only thing that it can do that the rocket can't do is launch a rocket. That's pretty damn complicated. I mean, it really varies by pad. Do you want examples? I can give you examples. The example with this is that it has to catch that bottom part. Tell me exactly how that's the rocket is more complicated when the pad needs to catch the rocket. You know? They literally farmed out the landing legs and took the landing legs for the rocket off the rocket and put them on the pad. That's really complicated, man. I don't know. We did pretty well with minimal ground surface equipment on the moon in the late 60s. Yeah, the LEM has to land the freaking rocket on another planet, and then it becomes the launch pad. That's a little bit on the complicated side. When is it planned to launch? Max, we're probably a month out. Okay, thanks for explaining. Well, Gorthon, that's just the case here. I could show you another case with, like, Falcon 9. Or I could show you another case with Saturn. I mean, here, check this out. Let's go into the Saturn V. The Saturn V's entire launch pad moves. The Saturn V cannot launch off of 39A, or couldn't launch off of 39A and 39B without that. Without the mobile launcher. And when they say mobile launcher, that's exactly what that means. Everything you need to launch the rocket is on this. And it's moved by literally a tank on steroids right here. The crawler transporter. It lifts up the entire thing, the entire pad, and moves the entire pad to the launch site. The launch site is what's called 39. In Complex 39 during the Apollo program is called a clean pad design. Basically, it's just a flame trench and some fuel lines, and that's it. Literally, see these white things going up the side? Those are the fuel lines for the rocket. All they do is they roll this out to the pad, they set it down on stilts, and they hook up the fuel lines and the HVAC and the electronics. And the water. And that's it. This is the entire launch pad. It takes the entire launch pad with it. This is a 30-story building. Actually, the Saturn V is 30 stories tall. This is a 35-story building. This right here, up there, 300 feet off the ground. That's ridiculous. Actually, it's probably higher than that for the Saturn V, but that is an extremely complicated piece of infrastructure. And then on top of that, you have a building that can hold 4 of these launch pads inside of it. See what I'm talking about here? Sometimes the ground surface equipment is way more complicated than the rocket that it launches. In Saturn V case, both of them are really complicated. But you see what I'm talking about? Well, we could switch it over. I can switch you over to tell you about. We'll tell you about Falcon 9. Here, let me go to the Falcon research pictures. So Falcon 9's entire launch pad is mobile. This is all the stuff that you need to launch the rocket. They move this entire thing to the pad, and then they turn the entire launch pad 90 degrees upright, and then they hook everything up, and then it works. The reaction frame and the strong back, that's the launch pad. With Falcon 9, the entire launch pad turns on its side, rolls down some railroad tracks, and goes into a hangar. Without the strong back and the launch table, the launch pad is just a bunch of fuel lines with a flame trench. That's what I mean about stuff being more complicated, or if not the same amount of complexity as the rocket that it's launching. Do they build the Saturn on the pad? No, Gorthon, they build it inside of the VAB, that big building in the background. The entire launch pad rolls into that building, and then they pick up components and they stack them on the mobile launcher, right? And then, once it's finished, they roll the whole thing out to the pad. The Black Brant versus its launch pad is way more complicated. Another good example. And once again, that's what Elon's saying. Sometimes building the GSE, building the things to launch the rocket, is more complicated than the dang rocket itself. Ground surface equipment is nuts. It's crazy. And keep in mind, on top of all that, that transporter erector can launch 2 different types of rockets. It can launch Falcon 9, or it can launch Falcon Heavy. That's pretty ridiculous. Pretty ridiculous piece of engineering. And then also, the launch umbilical tower for the Saturn V, the big red tower, and the mobile launcher, and the reaction frame, and the strong back need to be able to withstand basically a nuclear blast. Yeah, in terms of pressure, because there's a rocket engine firing right next to them, right when the rocket takes off. They need to be basically nuclear proof. Seriously, because the rocket engine's going off is akin to a nuclear blast. The overpressure event that happens when rocket engines fire is so ridiculously strong that firing all the rocket engines all at once at the same time on a rocket that has multiple engines can literally cause the rocket to explode.
Discovery.
Imagine what that does to the pad. See what I'm talking about, Gorthon? These things are difficult. Pads are very difficult to make. And once again, go watch Tim's interview. Go watch Everyday's interview with Elon. He says this. I've been saying this for years, but it felt really good hearing it from Elon Musk. I'm like, sweet. That means this pokey Twitch stream is on the right track. What is more complicated, Spaceship 2 or its launch pad? Yeah, there you go, right? That's a good example. Excuse me for my ignorance. I'm still learning. No, Gorthon, I'm not trying to be like, oh my god, how dare you not know how complicated. I'm explaining it to you. You asked me to explain it. That's what I'm doing. That's why I like building launch pads in Kerbal, because I like to understand the end-to-end process of what it takes to build, engineer a rocket, and build and engineer the thing that launches it, and watch those two work together. It's really cool, man. And I think people like to see that as well, just not all the time, you know. Yeah, Thomas linked up the video in chat. Uncapping 6-month resub. But yeah, there's more Starship pictures here. Oh my goodness. That's insane, dude. 2:30 a.m. or woke up to watch a KSP launch. One KSP. When I'm finished. I appreciate you waking up, though. Oh, man. That's so damn cool. I know it's non-functional. I know the pad is nowhere near being finished, and neither is the rocket. All these engines some of those engines on there haven't been fired, but a month? Give it a month. September, I'd say, at this rate of iteration that they're going at. SpaceX is going very quickly. Yeah, French. Dude, the tiling is what drove it home for me, guys. That's when I was like, wow, this is happening. Wow, this is happening. Holy crap. How will the wings be oriented at liftoff? I'm pretty sure they'll... Well, actually, I don't know. That's a good question. Game Coder, that was my question yesterday. Elon said that something with the super heavy catching thing is going to be able to lift Starship and put it up there. Does that look like enough tiling? Guys, they're missing some tiles. Starship 20 is not ready. They didn't... Its production timeline is not scaled to the stacking operation. It's scaled to launch. So I would say that this thing's probably like 80 to 90% complete. It's not finished. That's why they have some missing tiles. And once again, Elon talked about this. Here. It's in here somewhere. I gotta find it. Okay, so Mike asked him what's next after destacking, pressure test, and he said there's 4 significant items here. Is this the heavy? What do you mean? The first stage, yeah. 4 significant items are left. Final heat shield tiles for the ship. There you go. So that's how I can tell you it's not finished. Thermal protection for the booster engines. That's an interesting one. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe they'll put some type of sleeving on the Raptor's machinery, like what SLS does with the shuttle engines. Per the animations from SpaceX, the flaps will be out for launch. Yeah, that's what I've seen. You know what, Thomas? Just to not screw up the center of lift in one direction or another, probably deploying them would be worth it, considering Raptor's gimbal range and the forward center of pressure that you get from those wings. I think the gimbal would be able to compensate. I would launch it with wings out if it was me. Like if we were doing it in KSP, wings out would probably be better. Hey, Cetrell, long time no see. Has there been any news about Firefly Alpha test launch? Net the end of this month, Cetrell. I actually just talked about Firefly a second ago, dude. Yeah, if you skip back in the VOD a little bit. I talked about what they're doing, and they had a press release today about how they're going to try to mass produce subcomponents for rockets, which is a good idea. That's a really smart way to do things. An interesting thing. Okay, Proxy, what is that? I read heard that under the top fins there are hard points to lift it. The hard points that the crane is lifting will not be there in later variants. Proxy, yeah, I saw that. Where's that picture? Somebody linked a picture of those things. And I don't know where they are. Yeah, I must have X'd out of it. Yeah, underneath the wings. So, like right here. Yeah, there's some kind of hard point. There's some kind of attachment point there. I love hearing mass produce and rocket in the same sentence, dude. Me too. Let's see if we can see them. I saw somebody bring it up. So if they have some kind of mounting system... Huh. Wait a minute. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, that's so damn smart. I see it. Super Heavy and Starship, Prox. Same things. They have the same integration points to lift up. Same as the booster pins. That's smart. That's real smart. Hang on one second. Okay, only need one set of tooling that way. Yeah. Sorry, I just needed to send a message out real quick, dudes. Yeah, similar integration points. That makes sense. So the catch arms could lift it. We still haven't figured out. There's one thing that I do have a question about, though. So say the booster lands, and say the booster is just a little bit like off center. So I'm talking about like if Super Heavy is just, if it's supposed to come in with the grid fins like this, right? And the catcher arm's supposed to catch it like that. What if the grid fins are like this? How are they going to be able to lift Super Heavy to realign it for the arms to be able to put it on the pad correctly? That was my question. That's why I said there's got to be a crane on this somehow. The arms will rotate? How do you rotate a payload when it's already on it? So this is test launch. It's a mock-up Lego. It's a stacking test. So they did this during the shuttle program, dude, believe it or not. Enterprise in 1979 was rolled to the pad with the STS-1 stack. See? That's Enterprise. That thing has dud shuttle engines. There's no shuttle engines on it. There's just mock-ups. Enterprise was the one that they launched off the back of the 747. It's a fake space shuttle. It's just designed to look like one and be about as heavy as one. See what I'm saying? They built the entire stack. But these SRBs and that external tank are the same ones. That's the same tank that was used to launch STS-1. You see right there in this picture, that's the same external tank as that. And there it is flying with Columbia, which is the flight prototype. That was the first orbiter. See what I'm saying? What we're looking at here is basically that. All the components are not finalized, but some of them are flight components. And in Starship's case, these are the flight components. These will fly, but they're not finished yet. All right, cool. It is, dude, it's pretty righteous, man. It's, I can't believe we're here. I mean, guys, like, this isn't going to launch. They've already taken Starship off. SpaceX took SN20 off of it, and they put it back down on its holder, and I'm pretty sure they moved it back, but I'm not sure. Thomas, clue me in on that. For the 10-kilometer hops, the wings weren't fully in the out position, but were angled a few degrees. Oh, very interesting. They did move it back. Yep. Ship 20 is in the high bay and reattached to the gantry crane. So you're telling me that they rolled in 2 days. They took this thing from the high bay, rolled it out to the pad, put it on the pad, took it off, rolled it back, and now they're working on it again. That's what I mean, man. These boys go real quick, dude. They aren't screwing around. These boys go real quick. That's insane. That's insanely fast. Dude. Like, that is incomprehensibly fast, considering how big that thing actually is. A Starship, fellas, is the size of the shuttle's external tank. Actually, it's a little bit bigger. And look at the ET. The freaking external tank is huge. See the people standing right there on the ML? Look at that. That's the size of Starship, the white tank in the center. Give me about 5 to 10 minutes, Kaz. We'll get going here real quick. I got a test flight to do. Who do you think's gonna win, SLS or Starship, for the first launch? SLS. SLS in full flight production, T-Man. Starship will fly a test mission before SLS, but you got to remember that SLS's first flight, while a test, is basically its first operational mission. Meaning that the SLS that's going to fly, not much is going to change between Artemis 1 and Artemis 2. That is a production-ready core stage. So, meaning that the Artemis 1 core stage, you could take the LVSA off of it. If there was a bigger upper stage for it, like the EUS, you could put it on there. It's fine. Yeah, it could do that. You know what I mean? Starship's going to fly earlier, but SLS will be a much higher fidelity. It would be way more complete. So, like, once again, T-Man, think about it like a car. Starship is just testing one component. So it's basically a production vehicle that doesn't have, like, seats inside of it or a windshield or something. With SLS, they built the entire car and then they're going to test it. Starship, they test the tires, and then they test the suspension, and then they test the engine, and then they test the transmission, and they keep adding components to the car. So they're going to test it without all the components on it, like no windshield or something, or no back seat. And it's going to fly first, not the cars, but the SLS that's supposed to launch in November, that one is a full production vehicle. Is that the full build, or is there more to stack on? Sudden, what you see here is probably pretty close to what it's going to look like. Yeah, pretty close to what it's going to look like when it launches. You might see more tiles, and SN20 is probably going to be in a little bit more of a completed state without tape on the freaking tiles and stuff. Those tiles on the wing leading edge are glued on, from what I understand. These side tiles here are bolted on. Sounds like a scent from the Mars chapters of The Martian. Yeah? Yeah, exactly, Wave. It's exactly like that. The orbital flight tests for Starship that should be happening within the next, 2 months, when SN20 goes, this orbital flight test mission is testing one component. It's testing exactly what you see right here. It's for the tiles. SpaceX needs to test the heat shield. They have to make sure the heat shield works. And it feeds into a bigger design philosophy. When you're building reusable vehicles, it doesn't matter if it's the shuttle, doesn't matter if it's Starship, it doesn't matter if it's Dream Chaser, X-37, X-33, it doesn't matter. When you're building something that comes back from space, the first thing that you test is whether it can land or not. Right? You take the entire flight, putting it together, launching it into space, in space operations, re-entry, and landing, and you reverse it. You engineer it backwards. Why? Because if it can get into space, that's fine. But if it can't land, you're screwed. Ask me how I know that one. Ask me how I know that lesson. I should learn to heed my own freaking advice. So, what did SpaceX already test? SpaceX tested whether it could hop, and then they tested a higher hop, and then a higher landing. And then they tested SN8 with the fins, and then 9, and then 10, and then 11, and then 15. They're going in reverse. This orbital flight test is testing the heat shield. That's the next bit in the puzzle. They're going to test the heat shield. And then, if Booster 4 and Booster 20 work, then they'll start putting on-orbit stuff up there, like airlocks, probably like fuel transfer capabilities. We'll probably see tests like that in the future. They're going backwards. But in order to test that heat shield, right, you need to go forwards. You need to it's kind of converging from both sides, right? But generally, you start with the landing first. They did that with the space shuttle. The first space shuttle test with Enterprise, the first flown tests from the space shuttle program were the approach and landing tests, where they launched it off of the back of a 747 to make sure the thing can land correctly, right? They tested landings first. They didn't test launch first. Launch was much later. They did the approach and landing tests in 1977. The shuttle first launched in 1981. See what I'm talking about? They are unlocking the tech tree. Yep. Booster 5 and Starship 21 are already in production. That's right. Well, you can do parallel production like that, Floating. That's totally fine. Oh, geez. Nice, goalie. That's cool. Anyway. Yeah, they're going backwards. They have to go backwards. But in order to fall forwards, you sometimes have to fall backwards as well. No, in order to test the heat shield, they have to get it up there. So Booster, that's why I think they're willing to expend Booster 4, because they just need to expend one of these things to get Starship up there so they can test its heat shield. I guarantee you that Booster 5, Booster 6, Booster 7, Super Heavies in the future will probably not look like Booster 4. They probably won't look the same. And once again, you go watch Tim's interview. Elon says that. That's what he says. He says that these boosters are going to change. The design will change over time, meaning that that Super Heavy Booster 4 is minimum viable. It's a minimum viable product, meaning it basically all it can do is just go and shoot a Starship up into space. No landing. I mean, it can land. You could do it, but no catch tower, no nothing. It's missing some components. But once again, you have to understand that some of the components that are missing for Super Heavy aren't on Super Heavy, meaning the catch tower. See, arms go like this, not like this, or like this. It needs to catch it like this. Make sense? Anyway, did I get everything that Elon was talking about? Let me just make sure, because, yeah, just wanted to, I'm sorry, I could look at these pictures all day. More hit pieces. He said curse words and he owns a company. Give me a free... yeah, well, that's not space news. Capiche? Open up like this, not like this. Let me just scrub through, make sure I got everything here. Mm-hmm. 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 I just want to make sure I got all of it. Mm-hmm. 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 Ah, here we go. Yeah. Higher structural margins overall are needed for reuse. Plus, grid fins for aero control, boost back landing, protecting engines from entry loads. Yeah, okay. Body flaps for aero control. Deorbited landing propellant tanks and heat shield. There is a reason no fully reusable rocket has been built before. It's an insanely hard problem. Moreover, it must be rapidly and completely reusable like an airplane. This is the only way to make a life program. Economies of scale is good. Yep, that's right. We already covered all that. 98% done on the tiles. Yeah. Cool. I think we got all of it. All right.